Yes, so I think we are back from executive session. Thank you. I think we can continue. We already opened up the meeting.
So we closed executive session. So I think we're just going.
Yeah, I think we're back. So yeah, we're back from the workshop. While it's recorded on Zoom, the workshop is not one where we're taking public input. And I wanted to talk just high level the agenda, the topics we want to cover, because I know, Jeff, we're going to lose you at about 2. Around 1:30. At 1:30 and 21 minutes. Okay, so regardless, so the topics we're going to cover though are social emotional learning, and there was some little. That's such a broad topic with the focus on mobile phones and social media. As we're kind of getting towards the finish line on the strategic plan, thinking about measurement that we look back 3, 4, 5 years. How can you monitor progress and success? I was going to ask that we can move school committee meeting agendas up on the agenda, and what we're going to do is talk about the different topics that we cover throughout the year and just kind of get a better understanding how it all works out there. And then we're going to talk about also school start times from a logistics perspective. 4 to 4:30 is what I was thinking, but I don't know. Originally we set an expectation of 4 o'clock. Does anyone have hard stops? But if you don't have hard stop, I think that would be reasonable to kind of run through that. I think that's it. Leo, I was just asking you, do you have a hard stop?
Oh, but
while you were out, while we were out, Andrea did some work. We do have the room until midnight, so it's good to. So, Leo, actually, it is. That was not. I think it's a topic that's on all of our minds, anyways. But the first topic we were going to talk about was social emotional. Excuse me.
Were you moving the agenda up?
I was just going to move that to the third topic.
Third, oh, I see.
Okay, so just going to move that
up
on the agenda. So we're going to stay. Yeah. So we cover social emotional learning. We'll talk about the strategic plan. Then we'll talk about the school committee meeting agendas, and then go into start times and bus fees. But Leo, you're the one who initially brought it up, and this is, I think the intention here is to be very open-ended conversation. So,
the
background.
The idea of the social emotional, this main focus of this is around the idea of access to social media. The technology, we all know has exploded the ability for communications. But I don't think it's any secret that during the school day they become a distraction. And we've got rules, that are in our schools to help deter that. So it's hard to maintain, right? It's hard to enforce. The older they get, the more reliant upon them they are. And what you're seeing in private schools across the board is this very strict culture around not having them available during the day. And it's not just the phones too, it's going to be access to the chatting capabilities on the devices too, right? So there will be, in order for this to work, there's some measures to take from a technology perspective, there's measures to take around a culture building perspective, and then there's the expectations, of that culture, what that results in, right? What are the measures put in place, both from a network management perspective, managing the network to allow what needs to be working for the students as part of using the devices that they have with them in school for learning, and what happens to the devices that we don't want them using during the day. And, I think we've had things like locker policy, a locker, keep them in the book bag. And it's, it's become an ongoing problem because of the ability to enforce that through staff. And even though, we read the handbook and the guidelines in the handbook, I think it's something more particular we need to kind of tease out, at least that, to have that conversation of what could be. The state thinks it's so important, they're offering up to $1 million grants to help districts implement measures. So, if there's costs involved, grant opportunities that we could go after, and perhaps even partnering with some of our collaborative districts on it, on the idea could be an option. And it could be something as, students, I'm not sure how much students use lockers anymore, but perhaps, perhaps it's a new type of locker, right? The locker where you put your phone in, you put it on charge, you get it at the end of the day, right? And there's plenty of communications available for emergencies in the rooms. There's, there's phones in every room. So like I said, the devices still work, if need be. But I think it's just one extra distraction to help deter some of the, some of that social emotional support that is pulling away from them. So I don't know. That's
what any districts around us that have successfully implemented? So you're talking about private schools, but public schools that have successfully done this?
I have had people tell me, I have to go back in my notes and see which ones, but there have been a couple where it's somewhat working, but they're all very much in a similar place. Now, I haven't spoken to any of our friends. Well, I did speak to Nat Vaughn, and Robert. I haven't talked to Robert yet, but I talked to Nat just to see if I was barking up the wrong tree. Actually, more of a testing the waters locally here, and he says it is an issue, right? And in the after-school clubs, and the kids kind of fall apart on it. They go to their devices, and the teachers just allow it to happen because it's too much of a fight sometimes, right? So I feel like they know it's there, but it's an extra backup, right? We put some extra effort around it in our language, and in our case, it'd be our policies, so that the administration has the backing from us. After, what I did share with everybody is a rough plan about how to start the conversation, do some fact finding, right? Get some facts behind what we're asking, and then go after some measures. Now, I did write some of that with the idea of using grant funds too. So as part of the implementation, so that it's not just. We can roll it into the entire cultural piece around, cyber safety and information literacy as well, right? The advent of AI has made it so, that having a critical eye on information is more important than ever. So, and so that also includes, how to process social media information. I know what that can do.
So last time you mentioned let me just get you to school committee, like us being a policy making body. This might be a question for Jeff and your team a little bit more. Right now, should we just say no cell phones are allowed in public schools? Can the school committee do that?
We'll do it.
What did I just say? Shoot, sorry. That'll go away at some point. Sorry. But can we just do that right now?
I don't think that's
good.
So no, but I love. I was going to share a backdrop. But I love that. I think it's just as a conversation starter. If we could, what would be the implications? So I was going to just share a little background and make sure we're on the same page. Today, the middle school, the rule is must stay in the locker. The high school, the rule is it can be with them. You cannot use it. They don't use glass. They want high school credit, and you can use it during the class. So some classes they use it in the class all the time. It's part of what the course is about.
how enforceable is it at the middle school?
Well, I think it's pretty enforceable. I think one of the issues we have with iPads there was that things they could do on their cell phone, they could do on their iPad, and it was causing a lot of problems. So that was one of the reasons why we went to was that cost, of course, was
big part of it. It's, I don't think that's much issue with middle school,
Right.
In school hours,
Right.
certainly after school, let it out. Before school and at home hours, it's definitely a concern for us. In the use of it.
I think that's what I would want to separate, right? If you were saying that the devices were causing a disturbance in the schools in the classroom and taking the kids away from their education, it's problematic. I think that's one thing. But the overall impact of social media and the online usage, that is bigger than the school issue, right? And I think that there are parents, they give their children devices. If they allow their children to have devices, they do that for a reason. And they want their children to have access to those devices. And they should have rules around, hey, that's before school, that's after school, doesn't get touched during the day. But I think there would be quite a bit of resistance for people to say, my child has nothing on them, because people have grown accustomed, for better or for worse, knowing where their children are, and that they can communicate that, to them in the case of an emergency with a device. So I don't think, I'm struggling with, are our principals telling us that there is a problem in the classrooms that we feel like we as a school committee need to address? Or are we trying to make a dent in a larger issue that is the consequences of too much screen time and online interactions for our kids? Like because there's a lot of things we could say we're trying to solve with discussing it.
So I'd love to hear, an appropriate place to answer that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good distinction, a really good point. And I think it's more of making a dent into a larger issue. I think that if you walk in the high school and the bell rings, you have all of this closed. You see kids, you see that no matter where they're walking, they're either talking to the person right next to them or their faces in their phone. We've had some issues at the high school where we've had to block certain websites like Netflix, and some others. We can't block YouTube because there's so many educational videos that come out of that teachers do, and probably we block that. But I think there's just a heightened awareness of how much time kids are spending on their phone, and whether or not the schools can put a dent in that. To use the term, I think that's what we're looking at. Leo's point around the state, as I mentioned in our last meeting, is going to be a big push from the Department of Ed on this. And they told us by the middle of July that they're going to give us more information on what they're going to do with grant and how they want to structure them and all that kind of thing. So we're waiting to see what comes up with that. But the costs associated with it, the only example the commissioner had given us when he spoke to us was looking at places to put the devices when kids get in school. Purchasing those types of things, whether it's the closet shoe keeper, that people put in their classrooms now. When you go to high school classroom, you see it. Kids will walk in and put them in, and then take them out on the way out. But that's not universal. It's just kind of teacher by teacher.
Not solving the hallway problem there either.
No, definitely not solving the hallway problem.
Yeah.
So, for the lunch problem.
Yeah.
They're on the lunchtime too.
And I'll just, one day, it was prior to COVID, for 2 years, as part of the SEL committee, we studied mobile usage. And so that was with parents, teachers, kids, and actually in students within each group. And so I was pretty active in the year before with the homework policy, which I was like we didn't expect to establish homework policy, but that was the other one. Mobile phones, classrooms, the data speaks for itself. Mobile phones and then going beyond social. What we saw was in the middle school, they're required to be in contact. And it's not a source of angst for the students. In the high school, that requirement is lifted, and it's pretty chaotic.
We just institute that requirement in high school. Is that, am I oversimplifying?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
But I would just say like this was a little dated, but you didn't hear complaints from the students. I gotta have it. You didn't hear complaints from the teachers. Kids are sneaking them in because it was, if nothing else, it was more, it's easier in the middle school. Of course, it brings it out. It's supposed to be in the high school. it just became what Leo said a few minutes ago. It becomes a bigger hassle to try to control it than it is to, the teachers would rather teach the course, not all of them. But it was very, very difficult once kids got used to, yeah, it's not just gonna do a quick check.
I mean, to the teacher's defense, though, it's pretty nebulous, like what the rules are, right? It's kind of like you can have, so some people put them in the folder during the class, some people don't. But I think if there was a defined expectation of what we expect as a district would happen there, that everyone would follow. It's just that it's kind of quite open. Like, well, I mean, most high schools like that. It's not just Medfield High School, they're all.
Have you heard from high school teachers that they would like something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there are some that don't think it's a problem either, so. But I think people,
That's why the research be done in our communities.
Right, yeah, right.
So, because it's, like, to me, though, keeping it, if the rule were that it stays in the locker, this would be pretty, wouldn't be any debate as to what the rule is.
well, I mean, that would, kids don't use it a lot. Kids don't, I mean, they might put their band equipment or something in there, but they just don't. You know, they decorate it when
Were they all issued a locker?
We can just say
Thanks for
how about.
Do they all have? So stay in there, if they don't use it, but maybe that's not a horrible. When you go to school, but you locker, you gather with your friends, with your phone.
Yeah.
Like,
You can never enforce if the phone is in the locker room. If we say
Correct.
like phones cannot be seen in the high school, right? So they're somewhere, right? They're in your bag or the locker, sure. Whatever.
so it's like, what's the environment in most of you teach when you see a
It's
kid?
the same as here, you know, some people have the shoe locker things, but I bet a lot of what everyone was saying. If we were like, because again, Leo mentioned the policy thing, it's like, oh my God, I've been teaching for 10 years, I couldn't solve this problem. Now I can solve this problem for our community. And you just say no, and then the teacher just say no,
Because you're being told, you're not being a
right, because
you're just.
like, even if some management, throw a number, 20-30% of teachers struggle with this type of classroom management. Maybe it's more than that, maybe it's less. But it's enough where in those moments, the kids pull it out, you know, because mom texts them or they're on Kahoot for math class, whatever. And it just stays out. I mean, we all know if you hop on your phone, your thumb automatically starts like going to other places. But so I'm sure I don't want to overstep in terms of like, I've never been in Medfield High School, right? But like generally a white district that I've worked in for a decade, the phones are not like, we're making a bigger dent, like you said, like a social media problem, but they're a problem for kids. Kids' grades are lower because they have their phones in high school, right? They pay attention less, they learn less. They're more engaged in all the negative things of social media. It's a fact. Now, what percentage of our students and our teachers struggle with it? I don't know. Like teachers that struggle with the classroom management piece of like, play at the phone. I know my vice principal isn't going to take it. Like if no one has the teacher's back, then these things kind of spin out.
Right, like,
So the teachers
our 10 to 20 versus Wellesley 20 to 30.
doesn't matter.
But the ones, it's that 10 to 20 that makes it a lot harder to manage across the school.
Right.
That's what we discovered, and we're like, and it just became that nebulous set of rules that, like, that's where I wonder, is you had a rule that it's not the future.
Yeah.
What bad things would happen?
I mean, well, the argument, right, is a parent can't get in touch with their kid.
Yeah.
So we get that issue in the middle school today.
But you can get in touch with your.
Do we get it in the middle school today?
Aaron,
I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah, no, but that's the rule.
But getting at, and I talked to Steve this morning, he's getting it in 5th grade, so.
Your parents should not be reaching out to their child on their cell phone during the day.
Right,
Right,
and if you need to, you can get them. If something happens, they call the
Right, but
office.
that needs to be part of this, like your children, if they have devices, you live in a modern world, your children have devices, those devices are expected to be put away during school hours. If your device is out during school hours, it will be confiscated. And you as a parent have ways of contacting your child in case of the office. My kid and I email, because he's on, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, hey, mom, like this thing got canceled, can you leave
Right.
email?
Well,
Phones
also
on
have
you.
wearables will come up, right?
So that was an issue for
Wearables.
us. We had the wearable issue, we locked our parents working, come back for the kids during the school day. We had to put something about that. It's not appropriate to have in school.
I think,
But where I'm going, I'm pounding it a little bit, right? Just like, we have the rule of these, they don't like to have a rule at middle school. We don't have a rule at high school.
Start with that.
So like, so I mean, like creating a problem,
There's
right?
some belief that, they're almost adults at that point, you need to learn how to manage their time, and you need to manage the devices, right? I mean, there's a belief around that too.
That was definitely a belief in the study, like we didn't have unanimous support, I would just say amongst the administration, right, in the high school. And so I think like, if we just said, hey, let's implement this, put this policy in place, you would have, there would be enough resistance in those teachers, like, we need to work in conjunction.
I think they'd be stressed to the parents as well. I think there'd be
I think much more from parents than teachers. If you do this for teachers are knocking on the door, saying they think, with the amount of struggle that cell phones and devices have caused in the last decade or whatever, they're not knocking on the door, because that is the other argument, right? They're gonna have to live with them. And then, we can go down how much down the research, like, they're gonna have to live with them, so let's teach them more from high school. Their brains are still developing, they're addicts, right? Dopamine gets released and all these, that's the other side to that argument. Right? If we keep jumping across, like, there is an argument that says, like, then so we release them to the world after they graduate from Medfield, and they've never had it. So then they never go to their job because they're like on TikTok. I'm of the opinion, I think there's enough like counter to the counter argument of just saying, like, they're too young, they cannot control it. Like in math class, I'm getting on TikTok, I'm getting on Snapchat and just taking dumb, pointless pictures of my face that cut into my learning. But that's the reality. This is what our teachers are living. Like,
Just don't understand what parents would object if the school said your child can't take their device out during the day.
I don't even.
So, well, that's why I feel like surveying, we'll find out. I mean, I'm sure they'll make legitimate stuff. Whoever does will make some legitimate argument. Like, well, my son never does that, or my daughter never does.
Great, then you don't have a problem.
That's right.
Easy peasy.
I just think people are used to communicating with their kids whenever they want to, right? You take that away, that's a huge change.
We as parents should know better. That's their time in school. But I mean, that's like,
I mean, is it worth writing down? Parent objections.
I mean, like I said, we could vote right now to do this and do it. And if people want to vote me out in 3 years, they can. If they want to come talk to me about all the research I've done on this stuff, you can find it. Like, the phones are bad, and it's the big debt social problem, and it's in the moment. Go talk to teachers.
But I don't think we're asking, well, at least I wouldn't be saying that we're asking them to surrender them this or do that.
No.
We're saying it's away during the day.
Yeah.
That's the rule. It seems like we do that in other schools. We extend that to the high school. We see how it plays out. And hopefully, I mean, I'm not sure how to measure the success of it. It would be interesting to see, but hopefully you would see some measurable impact of such a rule in place. And it seems like a low hanging fruit start. But you're not going to get people to not send their kids with devices or, not have a device or, that's just not realistic either, but.
And even the watches will still be an issue unless we start ripping them off but it is much different to text my mom or my friend on this than to all of a sudden go on Snapchat for 20 minutes during the flex period or during class.
Yeah.
So I think
the watch is sizable enough that, it's not gonna be that everyone's gonna like this now instead.
Right.
But it's at least would be a step in the right direction.
Well, and they don't all have them, but they have more access to phones than they do these. That's the very.
Well, then if this rule is in place, then the parents are making more of a decision knowing the rules, right? Like, if you really need to talk to your kid during every block of every day they're in high school, you can get them a watch,
So that was the argument, or the counter argument then was, they have the school issues. We can control the school issues.
That gets
You can then communicate. I mean, they
They
do
can
still
control
get
their issue device too if it's on our network. If they
So they
log
can
into
work
our
their
network, we
phone.
can control that.
but
But then on their phone, they can do it, they can just be on cellular and do it.
Right.
I don't know that.
so like what I like, I don't necessarily in the room say, hey, let's put together a policy. I'm not saying that, but I am starting to say, if you did, it may cause a bunch of furor, and we may have a whole bunch more discussion that we need to have around this thing. Like if you had stricter rules within the high school as a base. I mean, we try to run a program. This gets into the topic we didn't put on. We try to run programs, the dangers of mobile device, and get 6 people showing. It's you say it's going to work its way out. Hey, the school committee was discussing today potentially a policy around mobile devices. We're going to get 600 emails and cards and letters. Why would you do that?
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, this is hyperbole, but it's not. It's
Yeah, no, I should have like being in a classroom for the last 10 years, if I was a teacher and did not have phone, just because they have the same policy as well as this is not an issue in the middle school. And all of a sudden in high school, we have rules, but really every teacher has their own rules. It's hard.
It was like for 2 years, it was the exact same thing. It was like, okay, but I saw there was some resistance. Like it wasn't unanimous amongst the teachers. So, you know, because it was a good argument. They should learn how to be able to manage that.
I mean, I think
That's
it's
part of
that this is a discussion that's happening on the state level as well, right? It's again, like it's not us just in a silo being like, well, this could be a problem. We think this is a problem. Like there's a ton of research on it, and the state is responding to consider a possible ban across schools, or at least grants to be offered to allow different towns to be able to put more policy and structure in place to kind of like start to mitigate this problem. So I feel like because of that, I wonder like have that additional, those additional points of data kind of push back on if there's a, kind of like friction or division in regards to the conversation, to be able to put a policy in place that is supported from like, I guess more of like a hierarchy authority in this space, right?
Yeah. Like I agree. Like it's kind of interesting when you said if you had a rule that was clear for all classes, it would make your life a lot easier.
As a teacher, also.
Yeah.
So where my brain keeps going is, okay, so what bad things happen? You're going to have students aren't going to like it.
Right. Parents.
Some parents aren't going to like it.
It's going to be a culture shift.
Is it a safety issue? I can't get a hold of my student. No, I would just say, well, that's not the case in the middle school. We do it all the way up until the high school.
Yeah.
And then suddenly from 8th grade, they're not used to being in touch with their parents all day. 9th grade.
Yeah, and the safety issue just can't be an argument because you can call the office and then call the classroom and get your kid just as fast as you text, arguably faster. So if the phone rings in the classroom, the teacher's going to get it, and some teachers don't allow cell phones.
Right.
So there's an argument to be made like it'd be easier to get. I mean, not really, but if every parent knew the only way you talk to your kid is through the school, you can get to your kid if it's a safety issue.
Send an email.
Sure.
So like Leo, I mean, I put it a little bit of this. How are you, when you talk about a grant, what are some of the ideas you have around this? Because like it could be one as a group, we think this is a priority that we want to study in more detail. With the goal being put in better enforceable rules.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what my recommendation is, pull a committee together, representation, up front, have the grant. I don't mind helping you write the grant. The grant can be around the studying, about, some sort of impact study, we take a baseline of, it's probably going to be all, qualitative data in the sense of anecdotal type data where you're asking people's opinions about how people feel about things, as opposed to what is tangible and measurable in this process. You know, like whether it's an the feeling of engagement, lack of distraction in the classrooms. Then there can be some professional development around it, you know, that the grant can pay for. The locker pieces, right? We want to have students have enough of a locker, and maybe they're not using their big locker, fine. But how about, you know, give them the option for, you know, for 15 to 20 grand, we can put on phone lockers in the high school for every kid, right? And every kid gets assigned a phone locker, and that's where they go, right? You know, so that's what some of the funding can support that, and it can support some of the network management. Authenticating with your Google account gives you access to, you know, put you into this group, and that group gets all the restrictions that are needed, and so on. So it's, you know, we shouldn't have TikTok on the network anyway. First off, it's Chinese spyware, and you know, and other things, you know, whether the capability is to, you know, manage, you know, certain other communications, not getting in the way as well. Because there's the, you know, the whole cyberbullying thing and everything else that gets involved with that. So, and that's where I think it's the human side, it's the cultural side, will impact social and emotional learning, or help support that process. And so the cell, it's not just the cell phones, it's using social media, it's about using electronic communication, you know, the difference between a text message versus talking to somebody and hearing the inflection in your voice, right? It's as crazy as that sounds to us, I think that's something that's missing, you know, when it's just technology, you know, tech communication, right? It's, the emojis don't express enough about how someone might be feeling when they hear something.
Is the grant money available for a program, you know, where someone comes in and talks to the kids about online safety and about, like, we have the cyber chip, right? But scouts have to go through to learn about all of those, like, dangers, bad behaviors, etiquette, all of those things. Like a program.
Yeah, I mean, they do that today.
Assembly.
Yeah, it's built into
that makes sense. The MCPE, they've been very gracious.
Younger people are getting,
You have that?
Yeah, the issue really is about more around awareness. So maybe funding gets directed towards a system, like a filtering system that parents have access to, right? So they're getting, because a lot of parents don't know how to manage this, right? Or they think they're managing in a way, but the students not really around it, right? You know, one thing I learned is IT in schools is for every website you block, they find 20 more that do the same thing, right? So it's really less about the blocking as it is around the education. And having parents be more informed about what's happening on the devices, I think you'll get a lot of parents opting in if they get the option with their own dashboard, right? That the schools share. This exists in many platforms today. It's a parent portal, you know, that you can add these devices to, and it's a shared piece, right? And then during the day, it's just part of the culture. So I think what I'm really asking is really investing to make this type of communication part of our culture more effectively than we are today. So we can even use it as a method of communication with parents, but we're all going to the same portal, right? We're all going to the same place. But awareness, you know, I hear teachers saying well, the most effective thing they can do with cell phones is email the parent, right? And that's great, but that's like, you know, teachers it's on the teacher to email the parent all the time. So I think the grants could be a jump off spot, you know, any number of these items that are part of a bigger plan. And I think that's my recommendations too.
What does a grant process look like?
Depends on which grant it is. So as Jeff mentioned, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is putting out grants. I don't know how much money they have. I don't know what their criteria is going to be quite yet. But I think we would have a good chance for proposing something, a well thought out plan. And if we go in with some of the other tech collaborative folks, you know, some other districts in the tech collaborative, I think, you know, we take 3 or 4 of those districts. Tech collaborative could even lead it, right? But, we're part of that, and we all go through the process of, a similar process in our communities. I think what they're looking to do is find some best practices to implement.
So then if it's a grant, it would be adequate. I mean, at the end of the day, the administration. So would be fine.
Yes, it would have to come. But if it's supported by the school committee,
For sure.
yeah,
For sure.
speaks volume.
But for sure, and I'm thinking of like, if we as a, as a group. Think it's a good idea to continue to prioritize. It's like education, could be a committee and a study, it could be a survey. Could be a policy, there's different,
Surveys will be part of it. Right?
yeah, there's different approaches we take.
I think what we'd be doing is carving, blazing the trail about what the best path is and what's our role versus the administration's role versus down to the principal's role and down to the teacher's role as a result of this. So, and it's only gonna, the wearable thing is only gonna get bigger, right? So when the glasses come, and if we don't get ahead of the understanding of this technology and what it's doing in our schools or how it's going to be a part of our schools effectively, then we're going to get caught off guard. So when the cameras can fit on the rims of your glasses, right, like they got to do today, you can get an unreal pair of glasses, and the student can have it connected to their phone and have it displayed, and you don't even see it.
So what's the takeaway? What's the action item?
Yeah, like I'm thinking we're like, yeah. I don't know, like there's the high level encourage the high school right off the bat is a way to control. Like the nebulous set of rules that exist. Well, I'm not supposed to have them in the classroom.
To Will's point, I think they need to come from the top down, right? You got to feel supported, and it's got to be publicly there, right? It's just got to be there. So, right? And it could be something that's, it's already in the handbook, right? So they could use this year to start the year off with a new set of, guidelines. Right? We are doubling down on the enforcement of these rules.
The cell phone must be turned off while in school.
There you go.
Different than a locker policy.
Yeah.
Must be turned off. Is that the negative things are one, for freshmen and sophomores. Must be turned off. I'm not saying this is well thought out.
Well, I think we need to consult. I think we need to hear back from the administration, right? What the high school needs from us in that perspective, like to help with that.
So part of that is that we studied it for 2 years. Eventually, they need a policy.
What's that?
They would need a policy.
Well, it's in the handbook. We vote that's a policy. Vote the handbook every year.
Okay, so we want to take an action to review what's currently in the handbook, and potentially propose the language around it.
It's going to be enforceable. That's why I think we need to hear back. But I wanted to put it on the radar. Something that I think that I feel that the administration needs our support, right, in order to make this happen.
So I think that then you'd start saying, say it has to be enforceable. The way I would look at it is, how do the teachers of the 8th graders, how much of a problem they believe it is in 8th grade versus 9th grade? Because that's when the rules change.
I don't know if they change.
They do change.
I think it starts changes at the end of the school day too. My son was an after school activity and they ended up not playing chess. They went on their cell phones.
And we have zero jurisdiction over what happens at school.
Not a school program, right? And that's an intramural.
Right. So, and I'm not here to get somebody in trouble, but it's just not a priority sometimes. Or after school, they're just not going to take on the battle.
Yeah, no, after school is very different. Sorry, I didn't even know that we were had purview over that, whatever the word is, but I don't know that you find a teacher that's gonna fight 20 kids that are supposed to be there for an after-school thing they care about, whether it be chess or LGBTQ plus or any program. It would be very hard to find any teacher that's like, I'm gonna pick this fight right now. But from 7:30 to 2:30, or whatever our school day is now, and if it changes, it changes. But we say all the cell phones are off, or all the cell phones cannot be seen in the high school. I'm like this, you guys know what I'm good to vote on that right now to enforce it this fall and say, let's go.
No, I do think that feels very straightforward.
Well, I think listen, that it's for low-lying fruit to double down on the handbook rules, then we can vote that in the July meeting. You know?
And then we still, you can speak to like the networks, right? Like anything we do with that grant to then, so we get the phones and watches out of there. Then they still have this device. So then that's where like maybe we like then it's like talking to the teachers and surveying. So like, what do you really need? Because some of this, like we put this big push in education the last 5 years. A lot of districts that are similar to us are in one-to-one. You know, the kids have devices. Teachers were told to like go more on device. And now all of a sudden in November, AI popped up. And now we're like, get the blue books out. You're writing essays in blue books. So I think the money and the teaching, like our policy right now works, and I think helps teachers. In terms of like how we can get it even better and help with the computers, that's where we can spend the grant money. Like how do we fix the network? Talk to the teachers and like, when do they need to have computers out? When is it better for them to have computers out versus like, because that's all changing and they don't know, right? Like high school teachers this year in September said, you're going to type essays on your computer. And after November and the rest of the spring, they're getting blue books out or they're giving them timed essays in class. So that's yeah. Oh, literally, yeah. Because you can't give a kid a final because you can't if you block Chat GDP, another website comes up. Like it's just like so. I think vote the policy now, whatever we call it, shut them off. That you can't see them in high school, they get confiscated, whatever. It's a step that's just there and it makes it more concrete that it's coming from us to help the administrators and help the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, I like that as a step in the right direction. And even with Jeff, get reason to be here for good reason. Would the administration come to that conclusion?
Well, I think that's where we should.
It would be great if they did. That said, yeah, it's better off that they don't have them during the school day, from the opening bell to the closing bell. They belong in the
I think we need to review the language in the current handbook. Let's just see what the language is. I think now at the next meeting.
Yeah, I studied it extensively. I figured it hasn't. It just the rules shifted between like high school. You can have it on you at any time in high school.
And on you, and then there's a couch. So and that's where we would want to.
But the fact that they can carry it in their bags, it comes out.
Yeah,
that's the thing. As opposed to you must.
That's different. If a teacher or anyone walking in the hallways sees a phone out and can't be out, I think that's different than in the law. Like that's different.
I will say that too. Like I don't know, are the cell phones allowed to be able to get on the network? We would want that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, now the cellular data got better now.
That was that was a reason why. Well, sometimes our own internal network is not appropriate. And high school, they needed their cell phones because it's the only way to teach the lesson. That was, that was an issue. That was at least we solved one problem.
I saw that's on Catholic time. I agree. I mean, and then anything's capable on shaping access on the wireless networks. My little school in Cape Cod, I allow every one user to have just computer access for the Wi-Fi and not a phone. I can limit it from Android to iOS to anything. So it's also
we have to say capability.
Yeah.
Going on with the Wi-Fi. So, a few years ago we had that issue.
Yeah.
We put out. We figured out how to resolve that. Because there's so much. Software out there right now.
Right, and that's where some of the grant funds. That's what I'm saying. I think it's one thing about the phones, but how do we make this a learning community effort as opposed to big bad school committee saying no, right? Let's do what we can do immediately, but let's explore the idea of you know, I don't know what we're using filtering on there securely or something like that.
You want to hear the current language?
Yeah, sure.
This Medfield High School restricts the use of unapproved electronic devices during the school day and all personal non-academic purposes. Unapproved personal devices, primarily cell phones, but may also include other non-school related approved devices, are not to be used during class time unless incorporated into the lesson by the teacher or if specific permission is granted. Students may be asked to submit their cell phones, personal devices upon entering the classroom and may reclaim the devices upon exiting at the end of the class period. So I think the spirit of what we're talking about is already in this language. It's
But
just, yeah.
it all says 10 to 20% don't enforce.
Right.
Then the students, like, there's not that expectation. So it's are not to be used in the classroom. That would be the language of this change. They may not, right?
Yeah, so part of it is just, you know, also pulling this back out, and we think that this or any other part of the policies are not being adhered to or understood. And I think we pull those out and we send them as a reminder to the families and say, you know, here's the link, this is the handbook, this is what everyone must subscribe to. We want to call your attention to section this, and show you these things because we are going to be strictly watching and enforcing these, and we need to make sure that you understand as a family our expectations.
Right, it goes beyond the family.
And let's go.
It goes to the teachers.
Yeah, well, let's standardize, right? Like we afford to buy, you know, what we call the little shoe flatty thing. We buy one for every single classroom in the high school, right?
We go to MCPE.
So the students get around that very quickly by bringing two devices. Put the one device. Going.
Wow.
Like we
Wow,
went
yeah.
through all it. We went through all it. Like it was.
But they got a burner.
It's all, I mean, like
The teacher doesn't look every day and check it, and then like the kid forgets and you let it slide, and then two kids forget, like it's just.
And it's responsible too if that device gets stolen, then you're really gonna hear about it, right? They left their phone in the classroom and it's stolen and that, you know.
Get
We
locked
wanted
up.
to do that.
$142 for a lockable.
So getting
It's a lot
back
of
to what our objective though is, because I think this is an important topic, but I fear that probably spin. What is our takeaway?
So that's why, like, the way I think about it is, we're gonna close this out in 4 hours. Is this something we wanna, you know, raise, like, really effectively say that it's a school committee, we would like to study it, or maybe we revisit it in July, let's look at the language and student count. Ask Jeff, say, hey, if you were to change that language, what would the implication? I think that's a good, you know, starting point. That maybe it's we're asking that we would extend the July meeting. I think it's exclusively for the strategic plan. But there's a follow-on discussion. We might get to the end of this workshop and say all the things that we need to do. This is 6 on the list. So
I think this is something that you haven't. I wouldn't think you can.
So kind of in a feeling where I'm at. Okay, you know, it's more about the consensus of the group. I don't love the idea of kicking.
Like I said, it sounds like we have immediate things we can review that language, right? How do we make it stronger? Bring in, you know, ask administration to give feedback, whether at the meeting or inviting us, you know, through you and Mike, you and Jeff.
I think the issue you have is how do you enforce it,
Right.
I think that's the.
That's why
I'm looking at it from the. Illustrating lines that I think how you enforce it. Because you're gonna have some staff members that are just gonna be walking right through and all it. And they're gonna have some stuff to do. They're gonna pick every single one, so how do you, right? Well,
Yeah.
of course, how do you enforce it? So you're gonna have staff members like, I don't want anything to do with it. Then you're gonna have some staff members that's on the roof fall and you're gonna, you know. So that's, I think, where you're gonna see administration saying, you know, that they have solutions.
So because I'd be very restrictive. How do you enforce it in high school versus how do you enforce it in middle school? Love to hear what the answers are. A lot of high schools.
Do we think all the middle school kids' phones are really in their locker?
No,
No, I don't think
It's
so.
been locked out.
That's-
of
that's-
since October. Technology instead.
But in this middle school, the expectation, and that's where I think we can help. And if parents wanna come at us, they come at us, but if we're telling, you know, top down, right? We're telling Jeff, this is what we want, Jeff tells the teacher, and there's not the kids in there that when their nice history teacher goes, and it's like, oh, you know, little Will, I saw your phone, I'm gonna take it. They go, no, you're not. This is my property. And they put it in their pocket, like, okay, well, it's in their pocket, I wanna pick the fight, and I'm gonna send them to the office. But if we say it as a community, as us representing the community, tell the school, take the phone or send the kid to the office. And then their parents hear about it, and it's just, us having the teachers back makes a big difference. Because what happens is, the 10 or 20%, the kid has it, I was just texting my mom, okay, cool, put it away, comes out again. You're still texting your mom, like, what's going on here? And then you go to take it, and the kid looks at you and says, you can't touch my, pick your language phone. What's that?
So yeah, so the rule basically is, can't go, if you take someone's phone, you can't go through it, you're not allowed to, some person.
Oh yeah, I don't mean to go through it, I
So
just,
all I'm saying is, so if they say they're not gonna give it to you, you can't, what's the, hand it over, you can't.
right, but if, that's what I'm saying, if Leo's point, I think top down, we make this policy, teacher says, okay, fine, get out of here. And then you go to administration, and they know we have their back, and then maybe we're like a leader in the space, another, you know, in Metro West.
I honestly think that's why I want to get back to the administration. What is the best way we can help? And what is the best language that we can put in there? What is the budgetary requirement that they need, you know, if something is needed? What is the communication to parents that we can help with? And then I didn't want it to be like an idea of taking something away. I wanted it to be an idea of we're taking this action because, right? And here's the benefits of it, and here's why. And I really want to have some of that there too, right? And that's why this conversation, yes, this is nice and immediate, and it's not something we're just gonna do this immediate change in the handbook and drop it. I think we should continue on with the process, right? Let's have Jeff.
I think you're right. I think that's the issue. You know, that aspect is, you know, what are the disciplinary actions?
Right.
It's very difficult with the new state law to suspend something. Right?
I don't think this is.
No, I'm just giving you a scenario. So
Yeah.
what are the disciplinary actions? I can't think of that, but you know, for high school principal, and then that, and there's probably a night kid who answer those. You know, what are the disciplinary? I know the high school has Saturdays, that's something.
Real status.
Yeah.
Actually,
So I put,
Very much responded. The rest of the kids don't even know this.
you know, I put review the language, how might you make it stronger? Ask the administration for feedback. High levels, July 24. I think explore the grant process and or as school committee sponsored. Whether it's community, I don't want to specify, but we're focused. Those are three actions. Sounds good. So next topic was strategic plan. So let me kind of
Sure.
And then you got an idea what specifically about strategic.
Yes and no. So, the steering committee will meet tomorrow. And they asked Jeff to ask Scott to share with us, some of the districts that have done this really well in regards to communicating outwards to their community and putting measurements in place to make sure that, goals are being achieved and the plan is being followed. So I guess my question to you guys, we don't have that information yet, we would have it after the meeting tomorrow. But in this high level, kind of like a high level space, what are some things that you feel could be ways to measure how the strategic plan is going and kind of communicate out to the community how the plan is going? So when we look at communication strategy here, we're not looking at the rollout plan, we're looking at over the next 5 years. How are we communicating to the community that XYZ was accomplished, or we're in the process of working on ABC, and then measuring that ourselves in regards to like a standard for, you know, the administration to how things are going.
So it's like a nice little scorecard around this.
So Michelle, I just want to add to that, is that the leadership team met yesterday. Over 5 hours, to go through the evaluation, the indicators, the timeline, and whether responsible for that delivery. So we get through that entire day yesterday. So those areas, the committee, you know, if we looked at the strategy that we looked at, we looked at the key action, and then that leadership team that we looked at, you know, the indicator, the timeline, and who's responsible for it. So that would help the committee say, okay, this strategy, you know, this was fiscal year 24, you know, and then, you know, these were the indicators, they become indicators, then we need to actually deadline them, and then we'll do the next strategy, you know, and then you have the individual responsible for that.
Right. Okay.
So, just trying.
Yeah, no, I think it's there will be information in there that says, you know, like the budgetary year, this is what we're looking to do. But in that same space, how are we sharing that information out to the public, right? And then also, what if something isn't met, or what if something's met and it's scheduled? This is kind of our own, I guess, from a school committee standpoint, understanding how we want to be taking this plan over the next 5 years and working with it.
The two things come to mind, maybe not knowing what the items are yet. So just speaking very generically, I would say it doesn't seem like there would be any harm in the strategic plan and the goals of the district, or something that I would assume we want to have published and available, you know, from the district webpage, where we could then show, once it's initially published and introduced, an ongoing scorecard on the status of those items. And then I would also take advantage of the mailer that was created this year and continue to build that out to be inclusive of this kind of detail. Because, you know, at present, it had a more specific purpose, but I think that is a communication to the larger community that we should continue to build out as we go. And this kind of an update would be a useful thing to have included, because that is more of a push, whereas someone actually coming to a website and having to check in on something, you know, requires that they have the initiative and interest in doing that. But I do think that, we should publish it. Now, again, not knowing what those goals are, it's hard to say what the right KPIs are. But I think you could give your, you know, that sort of, where are we, the status, it's in progress, not started, in progress, complete. And, you know, it's red, yellow, green, like here's where we are, and percentage of completion or whatever those are, just, you know, I would expect, and make that available on our site.
Yeah, I think that's really good to bring up. Yes, we talked about a little bit in the plan. I'm not sure because all this stuff is still like in motion or whatever. But one of my concerns with this hat on, Michelle, I'm not sure if you doesn't, but like we get to be in the room, which is great that we're in there. But a lot of goals, again, like generically, because we don't know exactly what they'll be. I guess you guys will put like a lot of goals. I think in these plans, looking at like Holliston's and some of the other ones that are created, they are like, you know, the relationship is stronger or whatever. I think it's very hard for us to quantify, so I think it's a really good thing for us to look at that. But that was like the whole qualitative. Yeah, it's just there's not a ton of quantitative data, and we have like a lot of it. If you're thinking of social emotional, we have like the Metro West Health Survey. For like in 5 years, can we have something, you know, go down that's a bad thing, 10% or 5%? I don't know how to totally quantify, but I really appreciate this idea. I don't put it on the agenda because it sitting in there, like a lot of their qualitative things. And you know, it's hard for us as like, I don't know, overseeing Jeff and the other administrators. It's hard to. So I think this is a great idea to do once it comes out and to have like that kind of ongoing scorecard out there for the public to see.
Yeah, I think that's one thing too. My other question though, I guess, would be in regards to like an outward facing cadence, right? Like, is this now a topic that we're diving into every school committee meeting? Are we looking at bigger quarterly updates and how things are going? Because knowing that some of these goals do take a long time, you know, is it really helpful for every meeting to be like, XYZ still going? Or is it better to be like, every 3 months, be like,
We just
we're
get
here?
the, I mean, we
Yeah.
don't even know what all.
Yeah.
What's the shape, like, but to me, like, I like the Kristen term she used, just like at least an ongoing communication. It says, hey, you know, for the goal that is focused on X, we're starting to look at, this is a way of measuring.
But-
Regularly.
Maybe to your point though, Michelle, when we're out there yet, we talk about the agenda for the year and there's certain activities that have to happen throughout that. We sort of like pick something for multiple spots. When we say, you know, this is going to be an update on the strategic plan, and maybe it's, you know, something in the middle of the Academy school year, right? We say that this January meeting, this is a line item topic for that. And so you have a combination of, you know, regularly available, published, you have to figure out like, again, not knowing what the goals are, what the measurements are, like what is a reasonable frequency of update for some static place for some people to look. And then we make it a, you know, annual, like a mid-year or biannual update on our meeting agenda and just put it, like pencil it in and say, this is the meeting we expect you to have that. And then we make it part of the March mailer.
Yeah, like,
Yes, so I just mentioned it because I'm gonna add a couple of things. You're, that what I wrote, right? So you do have some deliverable which tie back into the strategic plan. We do your budget process has to tie back into the strategic plan. So during that presentation, instead of creating a second, you tie in the strategic goals for this fiscal year and your strategic goals for next fiscal year within that budget. So which we've done in the past, right? You know, how that presentation. So that would be one of the
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
Which
there's
is-
a line.
And that should
Yeah,
be done some time right between December and January. But that gives the administration, you know, that goes part of the year. That will put it together on information. You know, so that could be one of the, we just second one could be the mail, right? It would probably some combination one. And then you can have one at the end of the year, which is June. And I'm just, because everything on your strategic plan has to come back to the budget planning or policy. So I'm just giving you
Yeah, it has
areas where you can
places where,
tie it
yeah.
in without needing another presentation.
there,
like highest level, I'm thinking about it is, would we have strategic plan? One is, okay, we're gonna have to eventually review it and vote on it. Two, you know, operationalize it. We absolutely want to have a measurement framework in place for, like, for it, out to the community. I'm kind of thinking of it like the way this year, community engagement. That was critical. It's a standing agenda topic. It's usually pretty clear, but it continues to surface. My fear is that once or twice a year, and see how we do against the scores. It's a little once.
So you think it
a
should be a
checkbox.
standing item,
I'm wondering, I'm just thinking about it in that light. 'Cause
keep
it's,
it on everyone's minds.
yeah, like near term, what I would be curious from the consultants who are helping us develop it. Have you helped districts put a measurement frame? What does that look like?
Right, that's what we.
Because we can easily go there and say, oh yeah, Holliston does it, and this is how we do it.
Right,
Right, like, I don't want to reinvent that
right,
wheel.
that's exactly what I
I'd
asked.
love to take all the, spend a ton of time with this area.
It must be.
Yeah, and say, hey, here's a framework we recommend.
Yeah.
A, B, C. Is it fair while you still have time amongst the committee?
Right,
Like, I'd love to, maybe one of you two are on and ask a few more of us. What
Yeah,
would it
I
look
asked
like?
specifically which districts have done it well. Because I do feel like they've talked a lot about a lot of districts and lots of them are very different than us, right? Like some of the examples they use are very different than us. So I wanted to know people that did it, school districts that did it well, and then we can kind of look at those districts and see which one kind of matches a little bit more of how we operate and kind of go in that direction.
With similar challenges, right? Because I mean, it's, if different, but the district X has low graduation rate, low retention rate, low attendance rate. Those are all very measurable things, right? That you can track progress of whatever the action steps are. If ours are too, you know, a little too fluffy, you know, in the sense of, then, right, how those can be measured. Time.
When we have, sorry, remind me when we're gonna have the draft.
It's next week.
So it's tomorrow would be, it comes out early July, and it's open for like 2 weeks. We vote on July 24th, right?
Right.
But the last meeting's tomorrow, Christmas, so it's soon after that.
Yeah.
Right before, after the fourth, but we will discuss that, we're gonna do something, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And then between then and the 24th. Yeah, but in any particular fashion, like how is that public input to be received? I feel like that would be a presentation. Presentation of the plan. Sorry, the meeting prior to. Okay. So putting it out there, but then putting it out there with the context of having it presented.
Cool. Yeah, I know, I mean, this is just, like Jeff would be presenting it, so he's kind of the owner of it after this, or re-present it, or.
think TLA.
Yeah.
To the school committee after the
Okay.
input. Maybe they're involved in the I don't want to guess, but
I'm just not sure, because even when you said, Michelle, like how, if you ask Scott or whoever, like how, what districts do this well? My opinion of these things is kind of like, they put it together and then they're like, good luck, school committee, good luck. I mean, they're consultants here to put this plan together. So I don't know, if you ask like which of their clients have done it well, I don't know if they know.
it sounds like
So-
they still have some strong relationship with some of those districts.
Yeah,
So I think they
yeah.
definitely, they
They're
definitely
all-
have some of them.
They're all
that are-
former superintendent.
Yeah, yeah.
Without saying we want to engage them for more services, they probably also offer services.
Yeah.
Around it, like they're at least wise enough to say, hey, we've learned a great deal about your district.
Yeah.
And we're giving you this as a plan. I would suggest, you know, as best we can while we still have them.
Right.
Hey, what would you recommend as we have, you know, all these 4 or 5 major themes?
Yeah.
Which are qualified, which are quantifiable? And is there a suggestion that we may have as base?
But at what point is it the administration's plan and not the consultant's plan? Next week?
I think after July 24th.
Something that you guys had 5 or 6 hour meeting yesterday. There was probably a fair amount of back and forth on how to do the administration.
Yeah, like I can, folks who picked these really like. Because I was asking Jeff some of these questions earlier. And in some ways, it's almost, you know, between, you know, what are we saying, what's the public saying, you know, this is what the plan is looking like, and then you've got the whole administration. Is this realistic, right? And it's, I think it's really important that it is, you know, becomes art.
Right.
You know, and there could be things in there that, hey, that's incredible. I don't know that, right? So, I do, you know, Will, I think that I actually value what you're gonna share. I know you were a bit of a doubter and says, hey, we do all this 6 week
Consultants
period.
cost a lot of money. Yeah, 6 weeks is fast.
So my opinion, take it for what it is, and I'm not in the news before, but I'm just looking at the calendar. So what I'm assuming we get next week or some point is a plan, a draft plan that the administration has blessed and the subcommittee has blessed. Right. After which I would want to put my suggestion would be a session, a public session, where that plan is read back out and shared with the public, not just in a document, but as a presentation that people can, you know, share questions and input prior to the July 24th vote.
So my understanding right now is that there's going to be a 2 week window, right? So again, I'm assuming without him here that Jeff is gonna send out something to the parents, and there will be something for the community as well to read through and then submit feedback.
Yes, it's
So
in that
you
part that
have
I'm
forum as
saying,
well?
yes. I'm saying that might be a good opportunity, because like, sometimes you just share things, right, and they're interpreted, and, you know, you don't have the context, and you can't ask a follow-up question, then you make assumptions about what it is. I guess I think there's value in having somebody speak to it as well as sharing it. I'm not saying not of course do the share the whole thing as planned, but I would also layer in a come hear about the plan type session.
Knowing that it's July, I wonder if when Jeff sends that out, he asks if people want something like that. Just because I would hate to ask, I would hate to have a presentation put together for July 20th or something and no one shows up, right?
You could do an office hours thing about it. So where it's two of us at a couple times, the library, to meet and discuss the plan if you want to come here for that.
Yeah, I just think, you know, when you just put something out and then you ask people to respond to it, and there's not the opportunity to have a discussion, then there's misunderstanding, right? And so I would want people to have the opportunity to say, hey, can you clarify for me what this, I don't know where you were going with this language, where did this come
We've
from?
got a listening session on purpose before the project.
Well, that's the thing, what I'm trying to do is separate the, right, that input, feedback, discussion from the actual vote. Because I want to make sure that we have a chance to internalize and hear that.
But the 24th could be the presentation of it. The August meeting be the vote on it.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line, I think there, which is, do we want to, if there's elements of the plan, they're going to be operationalizing in September. There's benefits to having. It's kind of like, I had some of the same questions around when we were, whether or not we voted on the solar ability to execute. And in the back of my head was, you know, the classic why now, why vote now? In some cases, so that they can continue to address and move forward.
Yeah.
So as I watch this process play out, I do recognize this. I mean, we did vote in the two members from our group to represent, been out there. I think eventually we're going to get passed. And I might say, hey, I don't like this word, right? Why not this versus that? But I think we all have the opportunity, the way it's slated on July 24th, to say it's vote and say, no, we don't accept this. But I want to make sure that we're in office hours to answer questions around how we got here and what things means is one thing. Gaining as much feedback as we possibly can is important. But there is a goal to try to get to strategic plan.
Yeah, I don't think,
Like recognizing that is what we're targeting.
yeah,
Like,
no
all right.
objection to trying to get to that vote by the end of July for the purposes of allowing us to get going with the plan. But I'm just, in the weeks leading up to that, I'm just saying, as opposed to just sending it out flat, create some forum, set of forms, I don't know what it is, but just so that people, you know, here, read it, and then if you have questions, you can come ask them, and we'll talk through it or something.
You could do, I mean, like, there's another week and a half, 10 days.
I'm just looking at, I know that we have, once the administrative retreat.
That's
But I mean, what you're saying, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. It might be, hey, you know, there's a Zoom event and there's a live event. One of them's July 10th, one of them's July 20th. Just like we've done it. Those have been values. You know, but those that choose to, you know, join gave us good input. So, you know, I'm just wondering if we're doing it, you do that within the
in that time.
timeframe.
Yeah.
I didn't sit on the committee, so I'm not one who, you know.
Yeah, no,
We could open a listening session as a meeting too. But I mean, between the 24th and the 22nd, like straight up honest, is there absence of the strategic plan? I mean, it's going to change your program in the 22nd.
you saying?
They have an administrative retreat on the 22nd.
Oh, of August.
Of August, where they were doing their plan, so between now and then, they're planning that, discuss what the goals are for the, you know, for the upcoming school year. So having the strategic plan voted, allows them to prepare.
It also coincides with, the consultants will take it back and get it all ready to be launched on the website. They use graphic design to put everything together. So any delay in that space as well, may just delay it. It's something that everybody.
So let's just plan another meeting that's done Zoom.
As soon as the plan is available.
Yep.
And publicly.
And the date now. And I know some of us are traveling, but probably do it. I see the urgency. Sometimes I always, you know, the use of Zoom though I think makes it a little easier. But as you know, I mean, a good chunk of Medfield relocates to Cape Cod, you know, in July.
I mean, you can make it 5 people, you make it 10 people.
I
I mean, I think that feedback is welcome.
Yeah,
It is, but it's like just the plan itself is now like, that's something to react to, right?
Yeah.
That's,
I like everything's, I think we should have a meeting during those 2 weeks. I think Kristen's point makes sense. I want to hear from the community. We're trying to build a partnership. That makes sense. The only reason I'm not speaking totally is because like Jeff's not, like Michelle and I can get on there and like I can commit to a Zoom time in those 2 weeks, you know, between when it gets released and before July 24th. And we can share, like, and I don't want to speak for Michelle, but I'm happy to do that. I'm just not sure if the community wants, I'm not sure I'll have all the answers, because like I didn't even know they were meeting yesterday. Right, like apparently the leadership team took the strategic plan yesterday and did some stuff to it, and I didn't know that was happening. So I don't know if like
Again,
Michelle and
I
I
just
can
want
answer.
to clarify. As far as I know, reviewing the key tenets of the plan, beginning to help the administration understand this.
Yeah,
Right, like that's.
Sure, I mean, that's what
That's my, I don't want to.
I just mean for Kristen, for this meeting, I don't know if it's most beneficial just me and Michelle, because we're here from the community and that's what we represent. Or if like Jeff should be there, or all 3 of us should be there, but like I'm down, I think more opportunity, even if people don't show up, for a presentation, for us to be there is good, is doing our job the right way. So I'm in. I just don't know if like just me being there, like answering all the questions, because I'm a little nervous. You know, there's 30 people in the room. And these guys met yesterday, and Jeff, like I'm happy to do it, but I'm just me.
Right, I think the concept of an office hours would be appropriate with the 2 members who are part of this. Yeah, sure. Like we would want to sponsor that. At high level, and if I attended without, I guess I have to look without attending, because that's.
You have to be on a panel, you just be an attendee.
Yeah, but
That's why I make it
still
a,
couldn't do that.
make it a formal meeting.
Yeah.
Just make it a meeting.
So if we make it a full meeting, which I'm all supportive of,
Just
I
have it.
recognize it was challenging to get everybody together.
No, we'll do it on
Zoom.
Zoom. We'll just do it on Zoom. Because she's on the Cape.
No, I understand that. It's appropriate. Half the world is not home.
Right, so that's why a Zoom meeting, encouraging people. Listen,
So we have,
people
would
know
have
how to
forum.
use Zoom.
It's a listening session.
We just take up to how many people on our Zoom?
Now,
500? So.
Or then show up at town hall.
Yes.
You know,
So do we want to set the date for that right now?
I just think you need to check.
Yeah, what else? Schedule.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk?
yeah, we have, an idea. though. I mean,
well, and I think Jeff should be here. And I think we all should be there to hear feedback so that we can vote accordingly.
Yes.
So
Done and
we'll
done.
Yes.
set a date between now and July 20th.
and so, and before exiting that topic, and then I think the other, let's just not lose sight of the measurement framework. You know, trying to gather more information.
Well,
I think this will help us
This will
get
help.
there though, right? Because then you'll also maybe come up with some ideas on what people would expect to see. And then that will help guide some of the things that you want to show as stats.
I think, you know, and it's I mean, I know we've kind of settled back into our original meeting pattern, but during the pandemic, we met every week. Right, that was to address the weekly one that's coming up, right? Because the information is changing all the time. This is our strategic plan. We can throw one, we can have another meeting to just address it for the next, for how many years it's going to be our plan. So I think Kristen's right. Not a big deal.
Fully covering the topic that was intended on the agenda.
Do you feel like having like, I guess my next thing would be then when you read it, think about it.
Yes. Yes.
Think about it. Great. Again, we don't have to have all the answers here right now, and I'm very interested to hear about it as well. Because I think we don't always have to be reinventing the wheel all the time, like other people have already probably done this in a way that we can take bits and pieces in order to make it work for us.
I don't think it's unfair to ask them, probably a measurement rubric to an action item, at least this plan.
Right.
There's a reason that there's these action items were put on the plan, not.
No, and they did, they said very, like, again, high level, they said that they had one town that did like, I think like a station light, yellow light. And then you can always, anyone in the community could go on the website and see there was like a red light for stuff that hadn't been started yet, yellow light for stuff that had been, it was in progress, and green light for stuff that had been completed. But then the community would always be able to see that, so we would have to decide what we wanted to look at there. So I don't think necessarily red light, green light works for us, but.
And I just, my livelihood is food schools.
Right.
Nothing worse than rushing to get the
Right.
quantitative measurement out there that can be interpreted 9 different ways.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I'm just, the way I'm thinking of it, one, I really do want to hear how other districts have begun to introduce this. And I think of it, and unfortunately, with Kristen not here, I think of it as evolutionary.
But and Tim, I think one of the things that escapes education quite a bit is things like, what's the expectation of completion, right? What is the roadmap look like to complete this, right? We expect to be at 50% by this date. We expect to be at 75% by this date. We expect to be at 100% by this date, right? I think those are very, like in healthcare and
Right.
I won't say public sector. I just think in K-12, there are some that are so obvious.
Yeah.
And there are some that are,
you're always working towards, right? I mean, the capital, and Mike talked about the capital plan. The capital plan's always working towards something, right? Yeah.
But it's changing.
Right.
yeah, it was a lot easier. Like during COVID, we had a scorecard. It was so crystal clear, like how many absentees do we have, like or how many cases. At one point, when we knew we had major budget shortfall, we were reporting, and we should do more of that. Some of that is just quantitative, and it's low hanging fruit.
You can add some quantitative data to qualitative, right?
So yeah, like and Kristen asked the question. Like first thing I wanted to begin with is talk about pay.
Right.
I wasn't thinking of it as we were going to have that framework introduced. First one individual up and running. I just think that would be wrong.
Well,
I would say right first.
This goes back to administration time. To plan, give them time to plan what that's look like too, right? With the KPIs. Measured by the number of cell phones seen in school today. Is that number
So
dropping?
you need the teacher to report it.
That's right. We've got cameras now. We just need to train the cameras to pick up on the cell phones.
This might be a great transition, but we do have the teachers. I'm using your.
I like that. Yeah, I got to.
Well, it's true. I mean, the teachers need to build, administration needs to feel supported too, but all the way up to, yeah.
So good. And my thought, one was these first few topics, all three of these would be a little meatier. So there's something about this. But do we want to keep going or break?
Oh, like when you take a break?
Yeah, I'm just asking this group, I don't have.
I would rather just keep going and get home as soon as possible. It's great. Gracious.
Okay, so you thought I was serious. So you didn't know.
What the hell? It's just fine.
That's okay.
Break it up and take a break.
So, next topic was school committee agendas, and, just like, I'll give you what I was thinking about, and then that's where it goes. It was more, I think especially with the new members, but even how do how do topics wind up on the agenda? How are we doing today? You know, so I think about it sometimes, are topics on the agenda that should be there or should not be there, and for every topic that is on the agenda, kind of certain perspectives as a line to our priorities. So, one of the things I think, Andre, I don't know whether you do this or somebody else, but at one point you had, what are the agenda
Yeah, I just kind of
topics
keep track of it.
by month?
Yeah.
This is what Andre keeps, I think, to make sure, like, during a certain year, we have to vote on, you know, are there things that happen? Make sure we don't miss them. Things we must do versus things we like to do versus nice to have. So, and I haven't really looked at this, but just this, I think, is understood out.
Because it's with template.
Yeah, the template of these are the topics that we either put on the agenda or we set out at the beginning of the year. So, hey, these are the topics that we're probably gonna have. So we think about the year as these are the topics. Typically, what at least has been happening since I've been chair, Shell and I have been trying to meet with the superintendent 1 to 2 weeks beforehand, talk about, you know, bigger happenings if there are. Like, so one of the bigger things that may have happened, what's going on, and always talk about the agenda. Like what's going on there. So it's I would like to say that it's pretty loose structure, meaning as topics come up and we'll try to get on that. And that's been kind of the way we've been operating so far.
Yeah.
So
Just looking at this, so this is like a template, as you say, like, so.
Certainly, I was sure that we have certain months. It's the budget. This just gives you an idea of so like if you feel like you have to find out, then you want to then I am proud. Usually
Like the bus contract every 2 years, so you're saying the last time it happened was 2021, therefore it must be discussed again this April.
So our bus contract, are we, was it 3 years?
Yeah.
It's a 3-year contract with the option to extend it for 2 years.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be that you meet with I think we'll see what the bids come in. If the 2-year extension is less than what the bids come in, then we can pay all of the contract. If the current bids come in less than what the extension is, then we'll go with the new bid. But you have an option, and usually that we have to go out to bid sometime in November, right? And then you guys will have to make a decision on pay.
So even if does that need to be then a fall item, or is that just on your list as a fall thing?
So I would,
Okay.
I really like it, but you're not big fan of falling off the bid.
Okay,
For the transportation.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you extend the contract, that's right. Boy, I always say, let's go back up to bid.
mhm.
Which is a little thing. But we always, we put it on April because at that time we don't have a better.
In the budget, so I see several places where we have the budget updates, public hearing updates. Where is the actual vote?
Vote in January.
At the school budget hearing, it's the last bullet. Under January, that's the last
The public hearings, the
school
vote.
budget, public hearing.
So what are the budget updates after?
So there's usually depends on the committee. We put it on and we got a fiscal 20, fiscal 24 update, and then we might want a fiscal 25 update where we stand moving forward with the budget, with communications, with work and with town, but you also have the ability to have an item of quarterly budget reports for the current year. So we like to keep that space in there to give them.
Like he was doing both this year, about what our current expenditures were of the, about 50% mark of the year we're spending, just kind of explaining where we were, and why things have been way. We didn't ask for it, we gave it to us anyway, and it's very helpful in understanding the flow. The biggest thing is salaries, right? But a lot of spending up front, supplies over the summer, and so you start seeing how those are coming together, and then and Mike is always in tune, like any good business administrator, holding us on what we're doing to save money in the following year's budget, or so forth and so forth. And like this year, we may vote a budget, at a certain percentage of increase or whichever, but that may change, right? Then that's always a give and take town in the schools, and then we come back sometimes as an amendment. So that's one of our main pillars of what we are here to do with the budget.
So the budget is ready and voted on by January, but we don't have it.
Proposed budget.
When the town hall is,
But then we the town meeting and when we vote.
which is
March.
May, I mean, it's this year,
First Monday.
first Monday in May.
and when do we see the first proposed budget?
December, we'll give you just yes, so there's a current budget calendar, start the process there. With the committee, because prior to that, we're trying to meet with all staff members. My sense of where the budget will be put at the budget calendar in December, and then we do the budget update sometime in the beginning of January. We check this preliminary, so you guys understand. And then around January 28th to 29th, we did the public hearing, which would be proposed budget, and what you vote on the budget. And then after that, you have, depending on where the town is, the months of February, we probably have agenda items to review, where we are, where we stand.
They're typically, but we're voting on, but you're typically then, interacting, warrant committee.
So we're required by product to have the budget to the town administrator by specific thing.
Is there a reason why, shall I know, I think I've asked this at other topics, but can we put the flow such that we get the proposal from the administration, from the budget,
Yeah, you'll get that through the budget calendar.
right?
Yep.
That's December. But then have a public, so what's the difference, I guess, between public hearing and public input? Because what I'm trying, where I'm not eloquently going, is a separation between public input and the vote, and having a gap between those things so that they're not happening in the same session.
To get the budget ahead of time, to get a copy to people. That's why it's held in the auditorium, because for a lot of people to show up.
Right.
There's presentations of it.
Yeah.
And the feedback is on the floor, so you can hear the feedback.
Yeah.
And then if it's big enough changes, yeah, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Yeah, I guess that's what,
do have to, we have to have it in the second day.
Understood. I'm saying there's no reason that there has to be.
If you could push one forward.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm.
and there's times, there's
Yes.
times.
Slash requesting, so,
Well, that, the impact of that is 9 FTEs. And we need, like the school committee says, we don't accept. It. And that means, hey, we need to continue to work more.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I think I want to just be cautious. This is just a template. Doesn't mean we're gonna follow it exactly. It's change.
right, but we wanna, I assume we wanna come out of here with a proposal for what and how we wanna cover these things. So similar to the conversation on the strategic plan, I'm making a proposal that we separate public input and vote into two things so that there's an opportunity for the committee to internalize, I guess, any feedback from the public input prior to the vote. That's what I'm asking.
So, and I, yeah, I understand.
I feel interesting too, and it's such a. So October 1st or before that, Mike is gonna send an email to all the department heads asking them for their predictions for something that's gonna happen almost a year later. Right, and as a former department head, it's your best guess, then changes all throughout the year, right? And that's, and they, and then it's all give and take internally too, right? Fortunately, sometimes it's usually I gotta give, and sometimes it's FTEs, right? And sometimes it's, supplies, whichever the case may be.
So so in your budget calendar, these dates are set according to the charts and contract.
Yep.
Right. So you can, that's what I'm saying, here, because this is your document.
Yep.
You can say, I wanna, so we know that we have to submit our budget to the town administrator by January 31st. So you can work backwards from this, right? Because there's certain requirements that we have to meet and say, okay, I want to add something here.
Yeah.
This becomes your document.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, on your template, you don't have to be that specific, you have to be specific in your budget that you issue to the public.
Yes.
We could have a discussion in December of the first draft.
Right.
But it's always gonna be shown.
Well, as soon as the information, let's put it this way, as soon as the information is presented as a proposed budget, as soon as that information is now publicly available, people are seeing numbers and reacting to them. And we have now a public hearing.
I think it works. So we usually have 2 meetings in January.
So
So you can see here, December is when we get that.
Yeah.
We have a meeting in January and then we have a public hearing. So there are the 3 different opportunities for public speak directly to the public.
And there's no reason why we can't
Before we vote on it.
add it to the as an agenda item in December if we get it before the December meeting is just.
Okay, so that's the solution, right? Like if the thing comes out in December, the first January meeting, we want to have the public hearing, the second January meeting, we have the public.
Yeah, so
We just want some time to digest.
I'm asking.
Okay.
So I'm just giving an example. So this past year, our school committee, that you guys adopted the budget calendar on October. Okay, so which we start the process on October 1st, but you guys adopted it on October 13th. Our first presentation to the school committee was December 8th. And then, from there, we continued to review and then preliminary, on January 12th. Then there was a public hearing on January 26th, and we submitted it on January 35th. So there was, and that's what I'm saying, you guys didn't think on this calendar, what it looks like.
So we could say on the November meeting, after the principal opening report. What the first presentation of the budget like.
No.
And that's part of the purpose of the exercise, though, is are there things on the agenda?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
we must be doing these.
Yeah, I think that the ask is the first January meeting, we move the public hearing to then, and then we vote in the second January.
We could do that.
Right,
Yes.
that's what, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
That way it's out there, there's a December presentation, everybody's heard it, the data's available, gives people a chance to consume it. I'm sure their, feedback, have the discussion, but in a two-way way. And then we can all feel like we've done our due diligence when we go to vote, that we've got all of the available information. I don't, not to say we haven't felt that way, but like I feel good just having a chance to
We can plan it that
digest
way.
that.
Yeah, no, I totally support it. Yeah, like, I think the tricky part, that we're like, there's a negotiation, there's a secondary negotiation. We can approve whatever we want.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah,
want to get the support from the warrant committee.
correct, yeah.
Eventually, the objective is to get the support.
Yeah.
So getting that, I think I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. There are different reasons why we have to vote, and we vote again, and we vote again. Budget might change. We might vote for $80 million budget, and it doesn't hit us until April. Then there's no chance. So but I'm
Yeah, I know
I
this
don't
one
see
has
any-
multiple touch.
if we're running. It makes sense to me. Running 2 meetings in January. Yeah, we just reverse if that is the order. Public hearing first. And I think the deadline typically is like 60 days before town meeting.
January 31st.
Yeah, that's the target.
Around. We have to get them back. So everything has to be done. That's why we start the process. But you haven't changed the budget calendar.
Yeah.
We try to get all our meetings done in November. Something to get it done. And then,
Yeah. Yes.
So. That's why it changed.
Yeah, it's a big ask. You have to get this stuff approved by an administration and the committee so many months ahead of when it's actually going to come into effect, but the calendar is the calendar.
And that January 12th, just 2 weeks, you might say, we recommend you to, we're gonna have to move it backwards because we have some information that we're not ready, but that gives you a week from that week. Right? So that's really the flexibility. For that 2 week span, things can change.
Yeah, and I don't want to shortchange you guys. You have work to do. It's a lot of work to do. I'm more so that we get the vote in the timeliness that we need it, but also feel like we've got the input in a timely enough manner ahead of the vote to feel like if there was anything there, like we need to consider, whatever.
So, like I said, we look at right now, in our program, and then this. And when we know, we try to.
But I also, like when I look at this, just if there's anybody see topics on here that says, hey, why do we do that? Or not so much why do we do that, do we really? Yeah. Right. Just when you think about like public duties and responsibilities, or alternatively, are there topics that there's going to be, it's going to be fluid based on what's happening in the world. Are there other topics that say, hey, why don't we have an X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, so again, what you see here is just what happens every year.
Yeah.
And this is where, if you got some topics where you say, okay, the month of November, I think you can say, why don't you because, that you might want to have, during the month, right?
Yeah, it varies. Like I think this is directionally accurate as to what might be looking like. I think here. That's how I look at this. It's never Like there are reasons why some things will wind up there or will not. It's just part of, I'm thinking about efficiency. When we all get together, are the meetings consistent with what we think are the right priorities within our meetings?
Yeah, I think this is super helpful being new in terms of like, if they're the right priorities, Tim, I don't know yet, going through like my first year cycle, but this is super helpful to see this. So, you know, we can see things coming up and talk to the town. And frankly, I think the two on the bottom is the ongoing, the bus fees and school start times. I think those are gonna take up a lot of time next year throughout. And I think that's where we need to get a lot of feedback from whatever, the people we represent. But yeah, I think this is super helpful to see the flow. And I think, like to Kristen's point and Mike, like the budget's one of the biggest things we do. I think they said, so it's nice to see this again, because last year we hopped on, you know, right before the town meeting. We didn't know that. So I think this is helpful.
And that's kind of like, it's interesting too. You say like the bus fees, school start times, the conversation around mobile devices, which we want, you know, like I don't personally want to say, hey, let's do this policy. You know, so like these are conversations that involve the community. You know, they impact. But then I kind of think about it as like, okay, what are some of those ongoing topics that are bigger ones that we think we are going to be able to have capacity on? You know, which is kind of a precursor, because I think we are going to get into school start time bus fees. That's kind of you know.
Did you want to draft for the year now, or did you want to
I wasn't
put it
asking
out there and then
this.
draft later, or?
Yeah, I wasn't intended to draft it.
Okay.
This was to give you, give us as a group a directional picture of what the year might look like.
Okay.
Start to just, you know, so you start thinking about it.
There's an item you'd like on the agenda. Pass that on.
Yeah, at any given time, and act.
Right.
So I don't expect like much change. It is, you know, I think it does then eventually get to like what's our typical agendas. I think we've moved a little bit this year where we did some things like the whatever the way we vote in minutes and stuff like that.
Consent agenda.
Sometimes some of the districts, they'll say each of your major topics from the strategic plan are the major bullets and then the sub bullets underneath. That's an option. There's some benefits to it in some ways, because you might have topic of X, and for 4 meetings in a row, there's nothing. It might be just an indicator to us, hey, are we really giving this the attention it deserves? You know, it eventually is, this kind of leads to, hey, how are we structuring it? We do new business, old business. I think that's some kind of a requirement.
Well, we've discussed it before. You know,
Yeah, so it's ongoing. And
it's the first time.
But that, you know, that could be a place where we okay, if these are the big 4 or 5 things from the strategic plan, we should be thinking about our agendas that way, because it always brings us back to that strategic.
So I guess what I would like, so you got to the next level of detail, but at a higher level, it would be great if by August we could publish, like, so today we have the dates, the meeting dates are published. If we could publish the meeting dates with some of like the known topics, like the ones that we likely expect are happening. Some of those ones that have date determinations with them.
I think we can do that for public hearings.
Yes.
I worry about putting too much on it. Again,
Where stuff changes.
yes,
Yeah.
we need to be able to be really good with this because of things that happen throughout the school
Yeah,
year.
because let's say.
So we make a promise that something's showing up in this month on this day, but something escalated in the school, we really need to be focusing on that. And we can push that topic to a next meeting.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a promise to the public.
Yeah.
And then have to update something later and something starts.
That's fair.
Yeah, look, I already
It's not-
said.
I don't think we should be making promises of an agenda 8 months from now looks like, but I think if there are known things that because of the date in which we have to vote or something is required, if we put those out there, then I think that's, you know, and everything has an asterisk, everything like subject to change, I would think.
I think public hearings are the only 2 I would come
putting that way. Okay, well, then that would be a start. I mean, that's, well, we can start with that. And then the other thing is the timing of the agendas. So the rules on the agenda distribution is 48 hours, right?
3 business.
3 days. No, it's 48 hours.
It's 40.
Yeah.
48.
What do you,
Not putting-
this, not included because
Could we? Because I just got one from the warrant committee last week, that's probably all, to reshoot 70. How much difference is it gonna change?
there's always something that's anything since posting.
Yeah. You have that.
I think it's just up to the timing between when the chair can meet the superintendent. And
So I guess it's a you and Jeff question then.
Yeah, I just, I'd ask the why. It's because if you're, typically the meetings are happening Thursdays. And so you want to be posting. Wednesday, Tuesday.
Yeah, Monday's a holiday, rather than on Friday.
So that we don't get into situations where we miss the deadline and then we have to change the meeting or do things like that. Just.
So
It's
that-
buffer,
it's probably
and
like,
it's additional information.
if that'd be up to
Some-
10.
Right,
We're not
so-
seeing
So I just think, yeah, we're looking at it as the pros. The buffer, which is a great comment.
And awareness of topics.
That gives us more
For
time
us.
and the public more time. It's all, what would be the negatives of doing?
The negatives are, again, being nimble enough to be able to see what's going on in the district. And in some cases, it's forcing the meeting to try to finalize the agenda. I would say we would always want to hold it the week before, which is okay. Right? Unless we try to hold that on Fridays, which would be okay. And then as we move towards 72 versus 48, it just becomes, that's the expectation.
Because the pride,
There were some agendas that came out this past year, well in front. Right,
I'm just like, make that a goal, like it, we know legally, right, it is what it is, but we would probably for us to overshoot that. If we did. As a. You know, and I think it would be helpful then too, so that we felt like we had enough time to say, oh, okay, this is what. You know, and then we're tied up for the next 2 days and whatever else, like we still have a chance to. Consume it and prepare.
Yeah, I don't have an issue for 3 days versus 2. And I look at it, like even where I first said it, I think we covered big part of it was, are we tackling topics that may or may not, should or should not be there? And then if that's a big problem of ours, that it's, we need 3 days and 2. 3 days.
I haven't seen any agenda requests come through to this chair since I. So, assuming we don't.
help that out.
Things.
Generally, they'll come to you.
So you did probably a lot during the pandemic and other things that were happening, maybe. Okay.
Pandemic was some standard things we were reading about. But, you know, generally I get more of a direct question. Someone call me and if it's something that's agenda worthy.
You just passed that
I
on,
love
yeah. But I haven't seen any, like, I haven't seen anything. I'd like to see this on, you know, kind of school committee agenda.
Right.
That's,
No, I mean, I think about it, it's the meetings, the what kinds of meetings. What are we going to, what is the intention for, if it's, you know, curriculum or something with the administrations, how are we looking? What type of information do we want in order to make that help our committee educate on it? In some cases, we can't do that. I think sometimes I don't want in overwhelming amount of information. Administration. I want the name. Right, which is what is it we're trying to do, or what is it that what was the purpose of it? What was the process that they went through? What is the result? What is the recommendation? it's a, you know, so sometimes I think those are more.
How do you guys measure success?
Excuse me?
How do you measure success?
Yeah, so it's not so much as, and Chris, that's the drumbeat the way it is right now. You use the agenda as a force. Let's talk about some of the bigger things. Because sometimes it's not this week on next week's agenda. But around this, maybe it doesn't need to be on the agenda. So, you know, but doesn't matter to me. You know, Andre as well. A lot of times you're posting this, maybe it doesn't take long to post. Right. I think the only thing too is when you change it, you can always change it. Like here, we changed it. I think there was a administrative error that we were trying to figure out what's the best agenda for this workshop. And then we realized, wait a minute, it's a holiday. Can happen. Then things get crossed out. Is that normal?
Yeah, you're supposed to indicate on the posting what was changed, so that it's a clear. You know, so it's clear that what was the original agenda, what we updated or changed.
Yeah.
For the revised agenda.
So as a general, we try not to change. Doesn't matter. Like, yeah, once you get used to it. I think when we started, it was 4 hours, 8 hours. So it doesn't very much get used to it.
48 is the requirement, right? Yeah. 48 is the requirement.
The only other topic on this, I was talking to somebody in town, actually, from another district as well. Like, where is it? The high school student advisory. The thing I love having students that for a certain portion. I feel like sometimes it's overrated towards high school and does not keep our eye on the entire district. So, because what you'll do, we have is the spokesperson, freshman, so on. And this is just Tim Knight, like just an idea. I kind of think about like, hey, might we have somebody like, you know, there's a certain maturity factor that you have to recognize, but at least opportunities for the other schools to come forward. Maybe they have a student helping represent what they're doing. As opposed to, I think it's either 3 or 4 times a year. We do have that, like, there's somebody from the school sitting, joining our meetings, and we have each class represent. But that's just something that we talk about. I just think it's like, is that the best way to represent everything we're doing?
So you want some representative from Lake and from Yale, maybe to get on it, like in the loop?
Something like that, yeah, like,
Sure.
and I'll be honest, it's like, it might be, it gets into this calendar, but it's like, we do have the beginning opening year report from principals. We brought in the site council representatives. They usually use that, they prepare for it, think about it. So, yeah, it would be an opportunity for, whether it's the student government and Lake or others to say, hey, what do we want to tell the school?
Sure. Seeing the kids is the fun part. I don't know, that's all.
I think you're quoting.
No, but it's true, but yeah, that's the ask, let's ask, Nat, and, I don't know how, to your point, I don't know how low we go on the ages. It's 7 o'clock at night, or whatever factors they are.
Yeah, there's some meetings where you.
It's like, it's good to see them, right? It makes us all smile, reminds us why we're doing this, but then the other side is, if you want to, I'm in, but the other side would be like, do they add that much value if we're trying to blow through the budget stuff? But I'd say yes. If you're gonna put a middle school committee member on it, or whatever they call it, student council person on it, sure. I don't know, but
Yeah, like it would be, so just, and that's part of what the workshop is. I think sometimes it's, and Kristen, you said action items. Sometimes it's like, hey, let's socialize. Might we do something a little different? Last year we said, we think reporting on the school different.
I mean, you could bring them in November, right? The November meeting with the principal opening report, we could ask the parent, of the site council last year, and they spoke, you know, about what was going on the site council, but maybe that's where we ask for a Blake and then Dale student or something to come as well, right? Because then they're with their principals, they'll know what they're talking about, like if you're planning out that the light meeting.
But I think that maybe that or it's me. Because I think end of year update right now or beginning of the year, it was a little something, what happened in the opening. I think we want to set council, what is it that you guys, part of that is very important.
Right.
About meetings with improvement.
I'm using in one of those schools during the school day.
Like a school committee meeting in the middle of the school day. At one of the schools with the student council.
Sure. No, I think it was just, I don't want to spend too much time, but thinking a little outside the box. Right, like within staying within the mission, what we're being asked to do. No, I
Sounds, I mean, have this cell phone conversation, maybe we have this cell phone conversation with the high school student council. You know, even with the change this year, how's it going? What's the impact? Have a live conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe the biggest mistake ever.
Well, we get that update, right? If we change the policy, we could ask those kids during that, we can get it, right? So,
yeah, and I want to be careful right now. I'm not changing policy. I'm not like I don't want somebody to misinterpret. I'm like, hey, we're going to do this, so therefore we need a meeting in order to check. That's how things spin. It's not. But I do, you know, I just think it may be worthwhile for us to think about. See how we
We're not
evolve.
changing the policy, we're just updating it to be more specific.
I mean, actually, you're not. That's I should have said that first.
I think if we want to add middle school and Dale kids to the updates, the same amount or less, it's all of them. I also don't know how much value it is. It's fine. Sure, I love seeing kids update and tell me about their projects. So, yeah, that's why we're here.
No, okay. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
So, the calendar for the year, though, what would be the target for picking those dates and sort of just to set expectations of when we think that usually would happen?
School committee day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's done.
For next year? Yeah. I don't know. Did we? I think.
Well, I don't know, there may be a nuance. We have dates for school committees. We don't have agendas.
Yeah, no, the dates. I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
the dates. for school
Okay,
committee.
yeah, so.
They exist. We
Okay,
can look them up online, but we went there.
I see the old dates, maybe I'm just looking at the wrong spot. Okay.
It's on the website.
Okay.
It should be right there. And I think
No,
that,
actually, they were already on it because I mentioned about possible date changes. Remember?
I can tell
They
you.
were on their list.
Yeah, you did, I wasn't there for that.
We approved it on
Doesn't
May
matter.
18th. We approved it on May 18th.
And currently, we're looking at hold on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Sorry, May, you guys were there.
And they are going to asterisk on that for the town meeting. And town meeting is off there.
I'm gonna go school start times.
Sure. So we've started to talk about school start times, like on a really high level. So kind of continuing that discussion a little bit, I've done a lot of research around like kind of other districts that have done other districts that have adjusted their school start times to try to look for their general thoughts on how they went about doing this. So I wanted to just talk again at a high level on what some of these districts have done, and then kind of get your guys' thoughts on what we should be doing there. I feel like one of my big takeaways when I was looking at a lot of these other districts is it took a really long time for the school committee to be able to vote because there was a really lengthy process around understanding and perspective. Right. So I feel like the beauty of the amount of towns that have already done this and the amount of data and research out there is I don't think we need to spend, I personally don't think we need to spend an entire year to understand the benefits of this. I think we can do some education around why we might think that this could be beneficial for our student population, and then look at like what we would need to do in order to go implement it, and if it's possible to implement. I think that's what we're actually looking at. So one of the things that would happen is Jeff's obviously not here, but he would do a superintendent task force. And some of the things that the task force might be looking at would be, is it good or not, right? So that would be part one. Is it feasible? Kind of the different gotchas that you might have with the different challenges or kind of frictions that might be in that space. That committee also may be focusing on education, right? So they may be holding different sessions, different feedback sessions, different forums to gather information from the public. A lot of districts have brought in some sleep experts to kind of present to the community about why this is valuable and why this is something that we should be looking into and considering. And then one of the things that one of the districts did that I thought was interesting is they actually established guiding principles for the school committee to be able to make a decision. So basically, if the committee goes and does all this research and does all of this stuff and gets all this community impact, then presents to the school committee on, you know, these are the times that we feel like would make sense. What we would be looking at is some of the principles on how to make a decision around this, right? So it's not just our gut instinct. So they looked at the impact on student well-being, physical, mental health, and academic performance, impact on family and staff schedules, work schedules, before and after school care, homework, impact on extracurricular activities, athletics, drama, music clubs, as well as after school jobs, any additional costs to families or the district around transportation costs, as well as before and after school care costs. Some districts had to hire additional consultants to do this, and other districts also had to coordinate with surrounding communities just because of how their process work, right? So some of those regional places. Let's see what else I had. Surveys, so lots of them did surveys out to the public. So there's different data points in regard to like survey questions that you would ask, gaining insight from the community on what we're doing here. And I think one of the additional points of friction, major concerns that a lot of the community had was that they didn't want, if the elementary school was going to be moved earlier, they didn't want children in the dark, literally standing in the dark in the morning. So those are kind of the higher level things that I found that I did. What are your guys' thoughts on this, and what are some things that we should be thinking about moving forward with this?
We went through this with Sharon 15 years ago. Yeah, we did one the first.
Yeah, Ashland and Sharon were very early in this.
I had a little gig in the athletics was the biggest hurdle, but mainly because we were the only ones doing it, right? Yeah. So there was a lot of negotiation with athletics, pushed everybody else later who we were playing against. So transportation's the other one, because we don't want your kids in the dark. It's a huge one, and you don't want them waking up earlier. And too, it's hard to get your elementary students, they have to go earlier because we're shooting the bus time.
Right.
You know, I think one of the benefits we have is our middle and high schoolers coming together, so they can have the opportunities. But the middle school have to start later too. So I think those are the major questions that we ran into. Theodore with adding buses, so that you have buses at the same time. I don't think that's a cost.
Traffic is also a concern if we were going to do that type of model.
Yeah.
The recommendations, though, is the recommendation of later time for the middle school and the high school?
It's specifically high school. It's targeted. So all of the research is specifically around high school adolescents mostly.
And what have other towns changed it to? I guess we ask it that way.
It depends. I mean, Westwood's actually moving, but they're only moving by 15 minutes. I think they're starting at 7:45 maybe here. So the recommendation from a sleep expert, that's not really going to solve the problem, but they were at 7:15. I think they were a little bit earlier than bus. So they're, yeah, the bus in 7:30. But, when did Monday school start?
And our middle school is 7 to 8, right?
Well,
For the first,
they have to be
Real
in
bell.
school by 7:20. High school music.
oh, okay, so you're talking about the when they're in versus when they got it. So 7:20, 7:30.
Many of the schools that have done this have pushed the high school to start at 2 o'clock. So between 8 and 30 is actually the sweet spot. But you will find sleep experts that will say 10 is actually really. No, I'm serious, and I feel like those people should have seats. So when we say 8 or 8:30, like the sleep experts say the kids shouldn't be going to school till 10 or 10:30.
I
Well,
would say the other issue is staff,
right,
have to shift their schedules.
take care.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so childcare and other things come into play. That we ran into, likely Tanya went out on leave 4 years to have our children at that time, so it didn't impact her right away, but did appreciate it when she went back, that it was actually later. So she does have a little extra time to get, I don't know, well, they still on their views.
Yeah, it was like super staggered. So most kids get there at 8:30, some get at 7:30, and then a small percent get there at 9:30. Just because we have a rotating schedule, so like,
Oh, so they're allowed to take their various days.
yeah, yeah, they're freshmen and sophomores have to be there, but 11th and 12th graders, if it's open. And even the freshmen and sophomores, I'm pretty sure if you're directed research, they call them, if it's first and last block, you can get that as local distance. So both days they're 7:30. The bus was, I don't know, not that my kids take the bus. There might be 2 shots at it, Michael, to be honest, but it's like the school is 1,400 kids and there's like not a ton of buses in the school.
Yeah.
Which that was my theory, but that's my hard data point on the next topic of like, if you charge bus fees, then does everyone drive? Like, because if you're in a community where there are people that are able. But yeah, for the start, I mean, I've done some research through some of those things, like the later the better, and it's just logistics. I think it's transportation and traffic and our teachers and coverage for that. Like those are.
Part of this, but again, like I don't personally feel like you need a full year to understand that this would be have less than activity, which is what I saw in all of it.
Yeah.
Very long time.
Well, it's like I'll like say with the phones, right?
Yeah.
If you guys want me to vote right now, I'm happy to vote, but I understand there might be some backlash, some backfill conversations with people like, what do you mean they should sleep till 10? I can show you like Dr. Seisler and the other people who have the information.
I guess, I mean, from the community's perspective, it's like the pros, the cons, and the unknowns, right? Would be the things that we want to understand so that there may be a recommendation on the other side of it. Like, yeah, this is how we got to that place, because the pros outweigh the cons, whatever. But I think clearly seeing like, this is the upside, this is the downside, and here's the stuff that we got to go off and figure out. And we don't know, but if we can't, this isn't an upside or downside yet, it's just an unknown. It would be helpful.
I think it's more than just the start time. They said at a half an hour.
Yeah.
So is it really making a difference to engagement for the school day? So I think getting some. So maybe it's not just that. Maybe it is, the adoption of an open campus policy where they, they don't have a first period. They have to study the first period. They can. Right? They other items like that. The older they get, it could be an entire time, not just the time.
I think the difference that we have though in our community is, this is I've always understood it, is that we tend to have both parents in household moving, and whereas I don't know the demographic well enough to make that assumption, but there may be more flexibility there with those kids being able to stay home.
Well, and this could be maybe that is that could be a busing item too, right? Where it's perhaps we need when I say a late bus, not late in the afternoon, late in the morning, right? That goes to strategic spots along the way or something. to facilitate that. You know, our town is also quite small, so, you know, it's, square mileage, but it's, you know, not very good, you know, fraction of it, so.
Yeah, it just, we have some routes that are difficult to get to. When they're followed. And so we have to, take kind of consideration that when they're on like 4 routes that there's nothing we can do, we have to go, you know, all the way.
Really offshoots, and everyone is, you know, turn around and do that.
And we looked at, I mean, we did.
You know, are in that scheduling piece too, maybe we have areas where they get a little more relaxed vacations. Just, you know, take an extra nap, you know what I mean? Because they don't have their cell phones.
Yeah.
They bring out. It's to me, I took notes, I loved, the, not typically a structure, but it might be a great place for structure. You said, one of them towns, we have a superintendent task force.
Yeah.
And what we're asking the task force to do is, you know, is it good and why? Logistics, is it feasible? I would think surveys from the public. It's just in there, you know, I love the guiding principles, like, hey, the framework was student well-being, work schedule, extracurriculars, financial impact. And a proposal.
Yeah.
And have it by, you know, have it in November. Part of what Michelle, I think we debated is, if you were to try to vote on it, we can start that. Is it a 1-year process? If you wanted to vote on it.
So I have like, let's say history in this, because this is the first time it's.
So there have been districts that flush with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The districts that I set up well, it's a 2-year process.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's a 2-year, it gives staff that year to prepare for childcare and schedule treatments. You know, you can't do it overnight.
Right.
So that was one of the factors, right, that the 2-year one. So you give parents within the community the flexibility to look at their schedule and if they have any flexibility in their schedule, it gives them that extra year to prepare for it. You know, the successful conversions have been a 2-year process. The ones that rush it have found more difficult and have to tweak and to get.
But in that space, something like having a proposal to vote on in the January, March, April, spring timeline, but then proposing that it doesn't take effect for a full year. That's what you're saying.
So, you know, and you have to negotiate.
Right.
So you can't really have to plan anything
Yeah.
in January because my
There is
experience.
language in my note that this is coming, right?
I don't think the union would give at least flexibility there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my
But I-
experience, and I could, you know, the union usually will take a little bit longer to negotiate
Okay.
these type of changes. That, you know, they're not gonna come back with, you know,
Right.
in January sales. So,
Yeah.
I think they want a little bit more time to look at it in different ways, because they'll also look at their experts.
Right.
To, you know, their representatives to, you know, look at it from their thing. And that's why I'm understanding that it's a long process and really big. You know, could you get something up on January? I'm not saying you can't. It's just it's something that just.
I guess I'm looking at what they ask is, if you want to give the task force a specific deadline, what are we targeting them with?
Yeah.
And then because I'm assuming they're not going to be negotiating meetings, right?
Correct, it would be a policy, but you would want a union rep on that task.
Right. And,
I think that's important,
right.
that they have a voice on the task.
Lots of people have the AD on the task force as well.
I think that's important also, but I'd also think that you must have to look at performing arts department.
Yeah.
That that's a big department thing that do. And they do a lot of things after school.
Right.
So I think you know, if you're gonna have the meeting, you might want to perform the council directly.
Yeah.
To have possible say. Because every community is different.
Right.
Yeah, if you're adjusting start time to elementary schools, you're gonna be talking to MAP and have school cares. You're gonna
Elementary
have-
school?
Huh?
Elementary school? I thought we just said high school.
Yes,
The one
you
that
have
has-
you have two buses,
Okay,
buses, unless you're doubling your bus
Understand
runs.
that connection.
Yeah, you can't do one.
Unless
Why
you just double it on
Because
the bus.
you can, it just costs.
So
Bus.
so if
we don't
you
want
decide
to
to do an 8 o'clock traffic for high school, you're gonna have to double the number of buses. Because you're not gonna be preparing for it, too, and then seven.
That's where it gets.
So there has to be a minimum of 40 lines. Because of this, 45. That's some lines. And there's not many of them, you know. But you have to take that into consideration. So whatever you guys decide, we're gonna find some kind of
Right.
They're essentially just swapping space.
Yeah.
try to keep it to 40. But and you know, one district, I had a conversation with one district, and the reason why they said, what we did not realize is how it affects filters. Because now we don't have that flexibility in the filters. Because it probably a schedule. I think, you know, high school, middle school, or later, they're elementary, they're early. And the more of the elementary kids could be field trips. And it was a couple of them when you were leaving in the morning, and you were coming back, you would be saying exact time from high school, middle school. And you'd be okay to school and go back home. So then you took down. And it was cost. And it's a those are little factors that you actually put
The task with all the impacts. Okay, when can they leave, go to the aquarium then on that particular?
So in your experience or like high level, what time frame do you feel like would be appropriate when you're meeting the first year?
it's
3 months, 6 months, 1 month, about what?
you know, but other things,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I've been in negotiations where I'm working another. In negotiations where we get about all the things on the and how strong it is.
So if we were, let's tend to, I don't know, we're shooting for fall 2025.
So that's the,
Yeah.
like, if you fall of 25 gives you the, you know, mitigates the rush and tweak.
24 would be the 25 would be that year.
Right.
For parents and staff to get to the schedule. I would say.
Yeah. So you're 2 years out.
That's.
Yeah, fall of 20.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
no, he's 26.
No, no,
Which is
No,
nice.
it's just FY 26.
Okay, thank you. Yes, same thing I suppose, it's fall of 2025.
I'm looking.
Okay.
Right.
So if you're gonna do that, then
23, 24.
you would want to have by spring of 2024 an agreed upon plan. So you want a proposal by December of 2023
from the task force.
from the task force.
So as part of the task
Okay.
force, you're gonna want them to look at all that list, including the schedule of the high school, because we may need to schedule adjustments. Just, you know, echoing, jogging my memory here, so. You know, how the schedule can and help accommodate some of this too. And I don't know whether there's any internal conversations about the current schedule as well. I don't.
They just updated everything, right?
It rotates now.
Yeah, they really like it.
Yeah, it rotates now, which is better. It
They
wasn't
really
rotating
like it.
before.
And then just.
They just
Yeah,
did it,
That's
yeah.
a huge project.
Yeah.
Well, now it's probably better because. But
I think it's good and flex time is all great, so.
Yeah.
If we can do this without adjusting the schedule, I think that's a quicker way to finish.
So initiate a task force with a set of goals to kick off in September.
Sure. Have a proposal by January and see how the teachers like it.
Sure. Who's guiding it? What Jeff will be putting here in the task force, with what what's our recommendations on.
We would be,
Be asked to assemble a task force.
Yeah.
Then somehow.
Covering the specific.
yeah, I think most of them had.
I
school
forget,
committee
there's some
members,
languages to the exact.
some varied in time, some had staff from each school, some had parents, high school students, building administrators, central office,
All of that.
yeah.
So I think in a high level, we can ask right now is Jeff to give us an outline of the task force. And in line with what you described, best practice from other schools, while the notes I have on other schools.
We think we would provide some goals and recommendations, right?
I think we, yeah,
Start.
perhaps,
Yeah.
And then,
Currently, who's the driving factor on this kind of besides the past of the parents, of course, and Sharon was the superintendent.
Yeah.
Sharon was the superintendent at the time, really wrote it. Yeah, so.
It's a good answer.
it is,
Yeah.
the data that.
it's also, again, like, if you look at what's happening state level, there's been a push for legislation to be pushed to do this. There's been pushed back on the legislation because there's such a cost differential between each municipality that the legislation doesn't support that, because you don't know what that looks like. But there is, again, like, state.
Unfunded, it's another unfunded mandate.
Exactly.
So a lot of our athletic events have.
Yeah.
There's a big last one, and so many
Right.
teams are doing it.
Or could sit around and wait for
Yeah.
90 minutes to wait for a bus to go to something.
If they're already-
There's-
Bad.
Most, yeah, I think most of them.
So the problem.
We had a list.
is
Sorry.
sure one is-
Yeah.
I mean, I can
Who's our comments?
My
We had that
big-
out.
write around, so it's Parkinson policy,
Yeah,
Medway, Millis,
yeah,
Norton, Bellevue, Denver.
yeah, there was a lot of them. We have all their.
That's the pros.
Text.
All of them are so close, and Gordon's like, whoa.
Way up there.
So, I mean, if you look at our athletic schedule, I'm not saying all the games, because I would say 70% of the games are like after football. What it is affecting that, I guess, this is another thing that should be considered. Since it affects youth sports because it pushes those kids
Yes, there
off
was.
the fields, it pushes them sometimes to get the practices, but now they're training at night because the high school teams are practicing now later or before the games are like. So that's, I'm just giving you a scenario where they're in communities where they don't have any fields, it's become a major issue because they don't have lots. So, if you take like Medfield, we only have one field of lots. Now we're gonna try to get, fall, try to practice, so we're pushing further back.
Yeah, it's hard to say as we have a recommendation on how much time we're talking about here. We can like use jobs, right? They're used to like picking up a 2:30 shift at Brothers or something now,
No, it's 3.
right? Yeah.
That's why that's why I'm really honest. I'm wondering, aside from that 90-minute waiting period allows them to get home. That after.
It's
and their phones, right? That's why I'm wondering, is the 30 minutes, I want to hear about the experts, is it worth the 30 minutes?
Not going to 10:30.
Right, so, you know,
Yeah, we're not.
Yes.
What was that?
Again, let's go over these
What's
little
that?
things that-
10:30.
I didn't think it was 10:30, I'm just saying, maybe 8:30. Where's the breaking point of actual value?
I appreciate that sort of kid, this is where it's so arbitrary.
So the data side. So we just gotta figure out what logistically makes
That's
sense.
just the nature of the beast, they're populated, but they could wind up. So why don't we leave it though, we're not, that's why we were asking for. That's,
Yeah.
the why. It's feasibility, maybe it's, asking, Dr. Mars, what is draft of the plan.
Definitely wants to research from the primary sources.
And the question is, maybe the checkpoint is. And before the end of the calendar, or would the checkpoint be?
Yeah.
Like a checkpoint could be, hey, we've done the research, we have a pretty good plan. For the end of the calendar. Might then allow us to say, hey, what, we've done some surveys, we could actually go this.
Right.
Or the checkpoint could be. We've done some research based on surveys and a few of these other logistical factors, we would like to be put back to March.
Yeah.
April. Right, and then I think that it's obvious, it's 2 years old. There's no wrong answer. Right,
I like yourself with that, other communities have done this. And from their experience, they can share information. I think like the examples I gave you of what other communities didn't think of that. They didn't think of,
she's done amazing.
And- and-
That was already done a lot.
you know, what I'm saying, they didn't think about, they didn't think about how to affect youth sports, right? They didn't, those are things that they learned afterwards, so we can learn.
Right. Yeah, I think this is another example of like, there's so many other districts that have done this that we can take lessons from and then, kind of see like what we want to be looking at or what are some of the challenges that they face that we can prepare ourselves, I guess, in regards to like working around. So
Like, and then the floor program in elementary school, Mr. Grace's program.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to flip to an FBA program,
Right.
or that's.
yeah,
Yeah, and, it's, start time.
right.
So, will affect, people that will.
Yeah, math will definitely get. That could increase actually the cost,
Right.
right? It's gonna go earlier. As their staff, parents have to do more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, high level. Like that was for us to. Task force. So.
So. Not right now, maybe, but we want to draft them sometime, over the course of summer, some recommended. We just mentioned a variety of things here, just to get those things, I think, into writing, share back. To make it sure that's part of the ask, the task force to investigate all of those areas, so sometime between, just saying we can capture everything that was said and give that to the task force as a, here's what we need answers for, here's what we need feedback on, so.
I'm implying that that's coming, but what I, the word I used earlier was, and then sort of provide us an outline for the task force. Very much in line with what Michelle shared. And I don't want to get, it's not something, but sometimes it's bold, sometimes this is what I'm going to do. We're going to assemble a team that's going to look like this. These are the 5 things we're going to do reports back to you. We're going to do some, progress report. November. Or final result. So if I'm wide open, if anybody wants to draft that up for
I'm sure they'll have thoughts too. So.
Yeah.
That's great information.
I mean, it's a rabbit hole once you start down it.
Start learning about field trips and youth sports.
It's a rabbit hole.
It affects everything.
Town, and you start with like Highland research, and then you start in Massachusetts, it's town, to town, to
Yeah,
town, to town.
daylight saving, how was that?
All right,
Right?
Okay, so the takeaway from this is, getting back to Dr. Marston saying, we want task force and we're going to partner with you on a set of objectives for that task force, as well as configuration, with the expectation and hope that it can get started in September timeframe. So we ask.
Yeah, another, with that, would like the, do we want to let people volunteer, like, so parents are gonna be on here somewhere, right? Do we want parents to be allowed to volunteer for this, or are they gonna be selected?
I would say again, we should find ways of just seriously.
But what do we think?
Although it's getting the participation bonus.
Yeah.
Just. I think that's a way of asking, for volunteers.
Right, but there's a concern that
We don't want
the same people get picked every time. You know what I mean? So like, do we get this task force, we send it out to the community?
so I just, I think,
An impression we have, or,
We have received emails about it, and it's an impression that I have, that like the task force and the committees were made up of the same people.
we could ask for diversity of voices, I guess.
I just don't know how.
Our
that's-
issues,
I don't know if
well,
it's, I mean, like, that's a concern, so I just know it's not, I mean, it's just,
yeah, so the agenda topic is staying, there is. Talking about strengths.
okay. So I just, I would like-
Where I see it though, I think what you're saying, for example, so what would the process be whereby it selects members of the task force?
Yeah.
Right now, the notes that I put down is, I'm thinking about, well, what's the makeup of that task force? I.e., it would be worthwhile to have a union. It might be worthwhile to have, I use the term extracurricular as opposed to arts. More effectively. I don't know whether it would be Park and Recs or members from youth sports.
right, but so my,
Right, so there's, but like we start thinking of the makeup of it,
yeah,
then it becomes like, okay, there's reasons that like youth sports, people, then you want, in some of that example, people who actually folks, participate.
right,
So, but I'm suggesting that Dr. Marston provide an outline for us. This is what the task force would look like. I could also say, we're gonna give him an outline and say, this is what we want from the task force. And then if that's what you want, somebody raise their hand and say, I'm glad to take that out. Well, it's not, we have jobs like as a committee, and we have jobs as individuals on committees to say, I'm willing to take a deeper dive on this. I'm gonna
Yeah, I guess-
partner up with Dr. Marston to discuss.
well, sure, I guess I'd be happy to do that, but yeah, task force isn't just like represent from each spot. Because we might get the same parents to get picked for everything, because they're a youth sports coach and they're like in the schools. That's what I'm asking.
we would want them representing a certain constituency. So if you're a coach, you're gonna do the put.
Yeah, I don't know what
But
the.
not the same, the coach representative that's been on like 3 committees selected by Marston.
And you could take that up and be part of the task force. But
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, just a second bullet, who the position is and like, how do they get selected?
again, as our,
That's a fear in all schools, that's not a here thing, that's not. All task forces, all communities, people don't
I
like.
think you could raise that as a concern in the process.
Okay.
Unless
Your
we're,
recommendation that you volunteer.
Okay.
And have interest, right? So that's the recommendation.
it's just, our position, unless we're, because policy is not. You know what I'm saying?
Not totally, because I'm just not sure. If like we were in charge of this,
Excuse me?
but we're talking about the task force for this, and I'm still confused. Like, I guess why the superintendent's in charge of it and why we're not in charge, because right now, if we.
I'll answer it. I should stay, but it's not my full-time job. right? Like I'm gonna do as much as I can. If you have a list here on all the topics we're trained.
Yeah.
And then to say, like at this stage, at what point is it our jurisdiction versus jurisdiction of the administration? What I'm suggesting is the administration move forward with the proposal. That's the eventual outcome. And theoretically, at least I know where Dr. Marsden stands on school start times. He would want to come forward with a proposal that we as a committee support and the town supports.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying there's a certain degree of trust I have on that. Now, going into the specifics of how exactly, is this a task force of 9, 27? I don't know. I'm not here to try to solve it out just this second, because there's just so many unknowns. That's how I look at it right now, saying, let's come up with an outline. And if somebody on the committee wants to help come up with an outline, all for it.
I guess my other point of clarification, like right now, and you might know this, I don't know, anything might know this, I don't. If the school committee, if we had a vote like right now, and we said we're gonna move the school start times, the teachers would be pissed. Some people in the community might be pissed, but could we do that right now? So that's just my question, like if we have all the power to do it, and I understand it's not a full-time job, but it's like something where we're driving the decision. And so that was just some of my confusion on why the superintendent, like,
we hired the people and the staff work for them, work for us.
right,
So
because like,
we could, yes, we could make the decision to have the policy, but yes, we'll apply it.
sure,
Who's going to advise us against it? People might be
yeah, so think
upset.
of it more, think of it more like the org chart thing, like where the board,
Yeah, one of the directors, he's the CEO, and we make decisions collaboratively together.
we just make recommendations for what we're asking the task force.
In this particular case, to help us make the decision you just said we could make, we would like him to lead a task force to bring back data so we can make an informed decision and be able to get the feedback from the appropriate people, in that process. Should we be represented on the task force? We decide that's the case, and so one of us can serve, or two of us can serve on that task force, of course, as part of that process, and then be a part of that entire process. See the makeup, and maybe even report back to us, like, hey, we've got representation from all 5 schools. We have an educator from all 5 schools, a parent from all 5 schools. We've got someone from before and after school programs. We've got someone youth for it. We've got the whole bit, right? I hear you. You're moving a lot of cheeks when it gets that reference. People are gonna be upset. I'm gonna tell you, it was not, well, it wasn't super received by all the shareholders. But now there was water under the bridge 2 years later. I won't even talk about it. It's just the way it was.
But I mean, just to say that, like that's, I think it's a fair question to vote on. And there's within bound. We typically announce it. There's a typical process we follow for voting.
Yeah.
But I think it is. I've seen how they've been informed in the past. I know they're never perfect.
Yeah.
Right. That process is never perfect. And again, if you want to help with, because I would like to see, what I love the outcome person says, hey, going into it, this is what the task force is. Like that's more concrete. I could look at it and I can say, okay, that's the expectations. That to me is what the outline that I'd be asking the superintendent to provide for us. There's nothing that stops one of us from saying, hey, here's an outline that I think I have. Or as a group, somebody wants to say, yeah, I'm going to take the lead and we're going to back on my.
Yeah, I think we need to provide guidance on these are the things we want answered. These are the inputs we feel like we need in order to make an effective decision and provide that guidance as a start.
So let's do this because it's worthwhile. Let's take, and this is what I wrote down. And it was Michelle, you tell me because I wrote down.
Okay.
You said there was a district. Why don't you? There was a district.
Yeah.
Who created superintendent task force. You want to read through that again? Because to me, that sounded like a template. Yeah, let's do that.
Well, so all of the districts did that, right? All of the districts have, so all of the
So what-
districts
and
have
but you
that, so
said-
I have notes from all of the districts.
Yeah, and you had a list of. Like,
That's the
I,
first thing I said. Like,
All the people.
well, yeah, I had, the why. Is it a good thing and the why? What's the data behind it? Why are we doing it? Logistics, or is it feasible? I'm gonna hold off on that bit. Guiding principles for the school committee to make a decision. I'm gonna pause on what those are for a second. Not in the right order, proposal. And where I was not sure, surveys from the public and or identifying points of friction. I thought that was worthwhile. Then I put under other, who is on the task force? I'm not ready to consult, but that's right what Union Rep said. Like that to me is a great, like, hey, that's a good starting. This is what the task force is. This is what we're gonna do. In a minute, I thought the guiding principles for the school committee to make a decision. Michelle, you said student well-being, work. I didn't quite understand the saying. It's work schedule.
impact on family and staff schedules, which includes work schedules, before and after school childcare, and homework.
I guarantee that the House administration that with other recommendations too.
Right.
Like people-
You had extracurriculars, athletics.
Yeah.
So they had and financial impact and or transportation.
Yeah, cost of
And I think the financial impact, the transportation to me would be captured in the impact on family and staff and work schedules.
Yeah.
So I think of that, you know, and like, all right, I'd start to say, what else would we want if he's gonna give us an outline as to what this task force is gonna do? What else, you know, how does that sound? Is there anything that we don't have, or there are other things we would?
Take all that and then. think about the things we can do it. So your point earlier, you just wanna pair someone up to go take this back, take the gas back. More formally, somebody,
What if
go through that list.
Michelle shared the information, Mike can take, Mike will take this back. What did I miss, Mike? I'll make us into the tape.
I think
But we could go back and just put it on the agenda for July.
yeah, the only one I would ask, as I thought about it, and Kristen, there's something you said is, it's a proposed schedule.
Yeah.
In other words, this would be, here's the check, whether it's.
Yeah, very nice.
We'll just have that list again. I'm sure that. So this is not the first time this has come up. But it was. We'll do this network, professional network, and there'll be a playbook. How to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, who is on it, and then there's a process whereby selection is
Like to Kristen's point, absolutely 2 months. So that they can consider this. Right, so. Or single parent. Same idea, what is gonna be the impact. Elementary and secondary.
I think it's pretty, to me, that's pretty helpful. Start, and I put revisit this part of July. Share the outline.
Yeah.
That's just-
And Elba students.
Let's be tied into this.
Yeah.
I think, you know, your timeline must be should be the same as the timeline changes.
What happens if they tie them together? I don't think I want to tie them together.
Well, you have to get, but, well, I made a great point, then, you know. If you have these, and you can see the families. Well, kids are up and not that. But we haven't done a study in that. know, bus. To get back to what, you know, we were saying about phones and stuff, but that's a different topic than we're talking about.
Almost, all right.
What I'm talking about, that we're talking about last week. But I do think that whatever decision is made by will affect, I think, the bus because it might find more parents because of but how many kids is starting earlier? You know, I know they have a group of these kids, but we realize
Or opposite, because they can drop them off on their way to work now, and they didn't before, there was a lag time, you know, there's gonna be a connection with this marriage.
and you're the one from like force because when you're generating more money, it is really it's always there. So I don't think we can make the plus piece. So if you want this, we can do that. But I do think we can really do this because you're not always talking about I mean, you can make a decision today saying 7th and 12th grade have to pay. There's this thing about says people have to get into the first case. You can make that decision today, right? You're thinking from that. It's different from K through 6. It's just something to think about.
This is part of what I'm gonna. I don't think you said it, but part of what I heard would be suppose we were to model out this for 6 months and come to a conclusion on a decision. Then 6 months later, school start comes. The model that we came up with might change. So it might behoove us. So not necessarily bus fees might follow school start.
The model will change, but there's still then a year and a half lag, so if a decision was made to start collecting, we would have that collection. And yes, the timings and such may change, but now we've lost 18 months versus of that. Incoming income.
Agreed. Where I start to go, and I actually have an idea of how we make the title. Where my brain goes gradually is how much change does the knowledge or at a given time. In other words, if you're taking on one and you want this, that's sometimes it's.
You go look back at the numbers too, the amount of money that we get back from bus fees is not,
It's going to be
not.
you need 18 months to put that in, you know, that you don't have that higher than 20 or 22 range.
Right.
That data, not just like data.
Collection.
Right, so it's not like you're going to take that money right away and set aside it because it's going to be expensive for social media and digital data. That's how important information. So there are costs that come with it, you know, and in that, I mean, it isn't in bottom line, but you have in order to offset it financially, even with what it's worth, right? To offset from the cost. And Medfield, in particular, you don't have any, right? So that would be a little more difficult to manage. And it's not we would have to kids, you know, in the system to pay. But it's all doable. I'm not going to everything, right? It's just what you want to capital, you know, and doesn't make sense. It's going to happen.
What's the distance from 2 miles? Yeah. 2 miles, if you're more than 2 miles from the school. Then you get this. You get it.
Good.
Yeah, I would have to continually do that kind of thing. That's, and again, you could have, because you're going from Memorial to Vila. So, one could be within the 2 miles and outside of the 2 miles.
It's your front door. And then seven. So I said, if you're looking at bus fees, the kindergarten to six, a little bit more difficult. Everything is used. You might want to look at, maybe you want to implement 7 to 12 because you can charge everyone. You can charge people under 2 miles, you can charge, over 2 miles. So that's another scenario.
That could be sooner.
That could end up happening soon. So there's different ways we can look at it.
It's our ridership.
So A through 5. And then it goes down to about between 7, depends on the year, is what I'm saying. It fluctuates between the years. Middle school, in the 70s, and then it does, 9th grade, it's probably in the 70s, and then it starts going way down.
I asked it, and that's people who have signed up and address.
No, there's no sign-ups. Everyone is given a seat.
Gotcha.
Everyone in the community is given a seat.
To someone to account, like, my kids get dropped off at the week.
Yeah.
You guys are aware of that.
So we do, we have this in there, so,
Yeah.
but we made sure that there was no more in there. Because
Sometimes it just so happens.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I'm curious is to what's the possible outcome, possible income, if we were to say start like a year from September, $200 plus.
Rough estimate, like enough to be like $80,000 or something.
Right.
I mean, if we're at 70% on
Yeah.
a jet, like it's not a ton of cash.
it's not.
So one job or one teacher, like a teacher class, that would be great, help us out. It depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
It's a big budget, so 100,000 or 80,000. It's all money we need to, we're on a tight budget, right? So I don't want to sit here on camera saying it's not a lot of money, but it could save us a teacher or something.
Give an FTE to manage it.
You don't need a full.
Oh, no, I don't mean that. I just mean like,
Yeah.
because I look at the,
You're right.
yeah, I look at the plus thing as, fundraising, for people better word, like, we don't have it now, find a way to survive. We always need more money. This is one way to do it, but that was the first time I've heard you say technology fees. Many schools, we don't do those in Medfield.
You don't, but a lot of schools, and some under here.
Yeah, so it's
And
just,
sometimes, depending on your district, you get more money on the technology. All depends on the makeup of that community. When I was in Dedham, we only had 7 buses because we were charging fees, right? And we only needed 7 buses. I think they're up to 9 now. But we also had an obligation to transform all private schools because we had first line in the community.
You had a schedule those.
We had a schedule.
That came up in my research, private schools for some of the bigger.
We had to supervise certification in the private school. So we had a bus dedicated to the private school.
Wow.
So,
this town is on the same, like, are there other fundraising things? Because I know technology is something that that exists, but we didn't just have talked about that. I've heard Jeff say like bus fees. Are there other unique fundraising things that might make us more money than bus fees?
I mean, your most common your bus fees.
Yeah.
The parking fees, technology fees.
We have parking already, right?
For parking.
Yeah.
I remember when the first time I saw it, the raise the parking. It's overwhelming. It's incredibly cheap. So let's just check. I'll be like, that's not gonna tell I don't live in my house.
That's the supply and demand, they're gonna go. I mean, you're gonna charge $800 a year, I bet they. Maybe.
It's about where our, some of the.
We'll lose some spots to the school.
onus from the both.
The way to build them.
Anyway,
But I think the onus for the bus fees is because there is just so much cost associated with, I mean, that's quite huge. I mean, now I finally see it in person myself, the bills, and it's extraordinary.
It is,
They charge.
and that's why communities, you know, community transform about. Most, buses.
we buy our own buses.
Yeah.
With this insurance.
Michael Price, I know all the companies that.
There's a lot to go. Right now. A study. It's time to electrify. So it's, you know, possible. Sure. People else need to join. Brookline. So this is because there are grants out there, but a community like Medfield,
Buses.
no, we have plenty of buses for in the city.
Oh,
So we partner up. There's a study where we're looking at electrifying buses, but if we share the cost, share the cost, how would it work, right? And you know, there's so the studies out there. Maybe it's because the child is just struggling walking forward and like bus kind of thing. That might upset contracts, right? But that's not gonna happen next year, right?
I'm just trying to figure out.
Proposing to the state, you know, that the communities around us. You know, so there are options to try to decrease those that cost. You know, we could, you know, we look at, you know, especially people maybe buying using that cost. You know, some communities have this technology, some communities have not. And it was even though that population, you know, is, but you know, we had a conversation before the new department both departments about combining resources, so buying. You know, we have vans where instead of they buy 3 vans, we buy 3 vans, that's it, you buy 3 vans, we use it during the day, we use it after school. So we have had those conversations where that might make sense, you know, but that would help out with, you know, small field trips or athletic programs or whatever we need it for, right? Where we have the ownership of those from 7 to 3, you know, 7 to 4, and then Parks and Rec skate. But those are discussions that we had after we have Parks and Rec that might help all sense of parks. That's I'm just putting that up in thought part of transportation. Have you guys?
I can, because I listen. But you know, because I think that eventually it's looking what's the next step around us. And part of what I'm hearing is there may be some savings we realize prior to. And like we want to at least make sure we're constantly. I think it goes with the same, but it's you know, I'd be interested in that. Because we are going to say bus fees have to come up, net it out, net out, you know, under the assumption that we did 7 to 12 set of assumptions. This is what the revenue we would generate. We all know revenue comes at a cost. Other areas. But it is kind of curious. Here are some other things along the way that we just could consider.
I know, well, you guys asked about potential drop off to start getting fees. So is that anything that from our neighboring communities we could learn where they instituted a fee, where they saw a change in their ridership?
So we can look at some of those communities. Most of the communities have had fees for a long time.
So it's hard to go back and tell us that.
It's hard to tell us, you know, they've been doing this for 20 years.
I think we talked about setting the survey out, right? Like at $200 we do it, but now if we're potentially changing school start times, all that thing changes so fast. It's like,
I mean, you could put part of that survey.
The 7 to 12 idea. if it eliminates 2 buses, I think that's saving, could save us money.
It doesn't say you're money. Because you're not eliminating the element, you're still gonna need.
Yeah.
You're still gonna need the same amount of buses.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They might not do a middle school, high school fun, they're still gonna need a problem.
Right.
So the cost is still the same. But they're gonna still be your driver and still be your bus.
So like you said, the only way to save money is to charge. And then I don't know, we've done an analysis and bringing it in house, and if we did it in Sharon, we brought it in house, because that's just they like to try to do things. I don't know if overall it would save money. We do it, it cut collaborative runs, you know, we manage the system for it. And it's both data, it's a school and special, 250 schools. I can probably get an idea of the, you know, per student and.
Yeah, so the issue that for me, which communities that I have right now is that it is a little bit. So there's a community nearby with the kind of kids when it was after school stuff is don't have issues with it. There would be double runs, triple runs, you know, trying to get kids to school.
We've had an administration that was the
So
they don't want to travel in Kentucky.
and it's hard to compete against other companies, but they're paying 30 to 1 an hour. The school districts are paying 22. As you know,
Always happens, they just need to be competitive, right?
About striking.
Yeah.
Okay, and those strikes were, you know, due to school districts that haven't been using South Island, right? If they want, they just to, you know, farmers. So you're having that kind of issue that, you know, if we were running.
So
We
you're
were
saying
running
it's
7
not-
buses.
you're not
We were
gonna
running
see it.
7, right, if we were running 7. You need drivers, you need spare drivers, you need mechanics.
Place to store the buses,
Place to store the buses, right?
place to work on them.
And then you have insurance, and then you have the inspection for you. You have the food buses.
The checkpoints.
So. We feel like we should table the bus fee idea or keep looking at it, we'll put it behind school start times or.
My 6th year it comes up every year.
Well, it's a
I
way,
kind of listen up.
it's just a way to.
I'd like to see what the projection, right? And I think we've done projections, right? And I think it would.
Yeah, we gave you something earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the thing to do is like, I think if it's something about it, we don't have to figure out like, what is the amount of money that we would want to bring in that would make this worthwhile, right? Like, I feel like your projection gave a very fair charge rate per family, but compared to our around us, it's pretty low, right? Like, so would it make sense? But it wouldn't make sense in that space to increase that. We would lose some riders then, but you know what I mean? Like, so then you see that net sum at the end is what we're really after, right? Because there's obviously a lot of factors to get there, but at the end of the day, what are we looking to offset? 1 FTE, 2 FTE, something else? And then thinking again as the, what specifically, like, maybe looking into the technology, charge, technology fee or something like that, like,
Like a fee, yeah.
maybe the conversation is less tabling the bus fee and more understanding of ways others to bring in fundraising, right?
Just increase it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
we want more revenue and less expenses.
Yeah.
So Leo's here, so we can talk about it. It's not just device, there you become the kind of device, so, you know, the software that you have to make sure that, that you
Wiring.
filtering. There's so much software that goes into a device to make sure that the students are sites for, that, that they're not putting, a virus within the system or shutting down the system. So that's without cost, there's all that kind of software, which is associated with student. It doesn't matter if it's a device that we hand them or a device that they come into. Once they get into our network, we have to protect that network, right? So that's the way you have to look at it, right? Look at it from a software point of view and a device kind of point of view. So if someone breaks the device, it's like an insurance, right? But there's also that cost behind it.
So the technology fee is charged to every kid who's like not qualified for like free and reduced lunch. Is it a simpler job than like the buses and 2 miles and everything? You just
So you guys were
How much are we talking about in the fee too, right? So, I mean, I firmly believe that technology is part of the system, like already like water, right? Wi-Fi should be like water. Whether it's, and I mentioned it's only Chromebooks, but mainly because I think they're wasteful. My son's Chromebook station is full time full time. Use it at home. I honestly, I had forgotten that, gone Chromebook to middle school. I had I think they last longer and more, they can be more creative. So I got pedagogical questions of themselves. Because the use of technology is a whole piece. I think with all of this talking about fees and extra fundraising, we're also going to could be asking for new building as well. So I got my property tax bill and it never goes down. So it's going to be asking questions, that we're going to be up against. We start talking about the fees and how much we're going to get out of how much are we actually going to make out of it. Right. I think that's another thing. How much we're talking. I hear you about insurance and security and other things. I looked at our tech line item. I think we should be a little higher. I think Kelly Bigger wants to do a little. So maybe that is $50, $100 to insure the devices that they're using. So if you get broken. Walpole self-insured. You looked at the fee and then the nominal fee, but it took care of all the rate. And I don't know what our rate was.
The tech management, I feel like when I was sitting the warrant committee looking at the budget, they had a lot of questions about the technology, right? Like a lot. So I do wonder if that would, like the busing. We can go back and forth on the bus thing, but I think there is an understanding that the kids need to get to school and gas prices went up and this is what the bus costs. Like the technology one was that they did do I feel like deeper inquiry into what is this? Why do we have this? What does this do? So I do wonder if we offset the cost in that space, like that too, would be more palatable almost, if that makes sense.
It's I was kind of I was thinking along those lines. I think what Leo said a couple of minutes ago really fun. I think of it almost like the technology is an essential part of the learning.
We don't buy any textbooks anymore, right? The money's been redirected in other areas, right? We don't. Technology is the access to instructional materials. So that's why we buy teachers' laptops, decent laptops too. For the last long time. High school, I see mostly kids with their own devices.
So that's to me one area where it would at least be for those that choose not to use it. Like again, it's more about what I had started to break down was explore broader fees, potential financial impact, the way we're managing. Is there potential savings for whether or not we choose to make it using? It could be the other way, credit. Credit. I would say if you're not using it.
Or how about this way around? Like you could look at it. We talked a little bit before about this idea of this culture around devices, uses of. What if the fee was to get access to a parent portal, offset the idea of the parent portal, the use of it? Parents are going to cost me $100 or $200 a year to get access to kids to control the device that they're bringing back and forth to get data back. No, I get that myself. But if
I hear something like that, I hear about the impact I can have. It's something that's pretty cool. Because then you also have a community of parents saying, hey, how are you handling starting?
but that's just it. I mean, people,
You can solve like 3 problems.
2 years ago, my neighbors, my kid was still young, but we were on a walk and maybe you know who she is, but her son came out and said, okay, I finished my homework. Can you turn it back on? And she pulls out her phone and puts the internet back on. And the house screen. It's like, that's cool. I'm gonna I obviously knew it would be done, but I was like, wasn't at that point. I wasn't at that point with my children, and it's a big deal, right? But now it's even more fun, right? Because it's what kind of content, you know. Like I get an alert, a new application was used. You know, I get another alert from the antivirus saying that this threatening app was put on the machine and it isolated everything already. And there are programs where the same stuff that is being put on the school devices, and I'm maybe a little different package, I'm not sure what they're using. But there is a parent portal option. And that is going to be costly, total separate cost. But I think that's the fee, trainings, and it goes right along the lines of, hey, you know, you can put your phone, your cell phone on here too. And we set out guidelines for what the school can see and what they can't see. But at the same time, there's a lot happening, right? I don't want to scare people, but I mean, there's a lot happening in the world where kids are exploring on their own, you know, the things that you may want to know about so you can have those important conversations. That's part of that, building the culture of awareness, not the gotcha. Because if you gotcha you with children, they will find another way that you will. So it's gotta be.
It's a good example.
It's just the kind of kids.
I like something like that because part of it to me, you know, it's an unusual. Most fees or technology fees, it's a little bit of that showing.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately.
I
I think something like what Leo just described is like, hey, let's think about things a little differently. Would I be willing to pay X dollars to start saying, get some of those best practices and some coordination? It's more value.
You educate the parents, you give them that option. Go on out. I think you're gonna get tried while
Those features also include school day hours, right? Shuts the phone down for certain things during the school day. Apple has it now for your have a family plan with your iPhones, but you can do it, you know, through the software the way it's.
You're saying that because I know earlier you talked about, which was still I want to pursue this, but it's not in addition. It's like, look, we're just thinking about fees for something that we think drives betterment of students in school. It's not a service.
Right.
It's traditionally part of K-12.
Well, there would have to be an investment up front to get the problem, but we can offset it with grant funding with the state. Like again, I still think, let's go back to the previous item. Whatever we engage in, we do with others, there will be interest and we will be eligible for those grants. Especially if we lay it out. Like when you saw what I shared, we haven't pretty much laid it out with action items. You know, it's, you know, and there's a survey, I drafted a survey as well. But it's just an option, you know.
Can we ask you whether it's the July meeting? Like, if there's an appetite for all of us, if the July meeting becomes,
He's gonna call
a broader meeting. But I mean, sure. Say draft up kind of a plan, or just kind of put pen to paper.
Yeah.
Hey, here's some ideas we.
I did. I was going to put it on the agenda. We can get it out there.
I would have a conversation with the public to see when we get this out.
Yeah.
Because we, you know, you have something that is correct in practice, but you have to.
Well, I've got my own.
I know what I would say, but you have to turn it on. You have to put this in protocols that public policy.
But we may have, I'm not sure what we do. Owen may own this we may own the software already, district that has that as an option.
Correct. Correct. But then it becomes a resource to help what works, you know. But like that, and we're getting to obviously the opening topic was around this, closing topic. Bus fees. I guess what I'm hearing is it's broader than bus fees. I think no matter what, we data that jumps off the page of this once we start, that's. But those two topics may come together a little more.
And the 7 to 12 bus fees, I mean, it started with a nominal fee, all over, you know, and like that will maybe shake out. And again, we're not going to saving the seats income help offset it. I also think about and that's the additional disruption and or appetite for change. All right, I'll tell you something on the tech fee, the Walpole tech fee. So the distance I'm going, it actually they had to like pause it for years. It's just they couldn't. It was in a revolving. No, they didn't pause charging because it had too much money in there. It was revolving. It was revolving. That wasn't revolving. So it was just growing. So the audit could come on.
But in Denver, we tied it back to the fee would offset the capital.
Yeah, and I think, and that's to say, it depends on size of how you're structuring those pieces. And you know, and E-rate, you know, what's E-rateable. So I think the grant E-rate's not fair to the district either. Unlike the Cape Cod, we 9% reimbursement. Yeah, we get 40%.
I was just thinking in my, like, just for action, like if it is, whether it's, it doesn't have to be July, but if Leo were to report back.
I'll flush the
technology needs potential call value cost. Right. Like I think of that as a little bit more like a program. If you talk about a revolving, it's growing. There's an FTE that eventually becomes part of the management.
Revolving, I mean,
like it makes more sense to solve the problem that we all have.
And I'm not against it because, you know, when we started the program in Sharon, we used to sell internet service to them. Like we were an internet service provider, later 12 lines, and this is in the late 90s, right? And we used to rent our computer labs to lesbians, right? So these were entrepreneurial ways of supplying your programs. And yes, the rental of our labs was phenomenal, right? And it funded all the, like, paid for the T1 lines and everything else we needed at the time, which were expensive. You know, eventually those needs, you know, they don't need them anymore, right? And they have to shift to other vendors. So, and that's how you can provide strategic programming, strategic fundraising possibilities for, you know, for your districts by having these advanced labs.
You can have this.
So we could do some more things around the technology here, but maybe it's less about supporting the Chromebook program, but maybe it's, you know, getting the next generation. And we open a AR/VR lab program that we're renting out to other folks using that as a revolving account to fund things. In the meantime, we're offering internal AR/VR developments and advanced things to our students during the day and after school. As an example, in that lab sits. This particular one would be more cultural, but in the sense, let's empower our parents to help manage technology on a regular basis. I mean, the interface could possibly be used for other things too, to communicate with parents about anything. But at the same time, you know, it's helping people manage the use of technology in their houses, right? You know, we used to run and share like day without computers or something. Right? Once every few months, so on Sundays, I try to promote it, do family things together. That was 15 years ago, right? You fast forward today,
You guys were trying to do that with my kids. I mean, we're great, like the first year or two. And
Yeah.
Just back to questions. Let's be agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just tell us, you know. we can,
But, well, so, and what I'm thinking is, because then I feel like there's the bus fees, and some conversation, product fees. That's where those were. Just to say that a little more. Where I say that, I'm thinking that there's a couple of the other things we talked about today that are popular as, for me personally, that are higher. But I do love the idea of putting a little bit of pen to paper.
Yeah, I'll give it Owen.
For the fact is,
see, well, I think, I don't want, I'm pretty sure I know what we use it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wrong.
Right.
And there is a
maybe-
parental portion.
Okay,
I know, part of that.
Yeah.
We haven't opened up yet.
I think it's actually good, but
I don't. But what I'm saying is, it's a way to look into, you know, not your typical fees, right, but opening up, you know. That option with other, in ways.
yeah, I mean, that's fine.
and maybe it's offsets one of the tech FTEs provide email support, you know, problems. Or maybe it's an initiative that was taken on by 15 tech specialists, where they have nights where people come in and, you know, you're getting them, then you're bringing in the whole, the school connection, right? You're bringing in on something that affects all of us. So,
That's helpful. I mean, and I do, I feel like again, sort of linking this context with the whole.
but then I truly am concerned about the fees when you're gonna ask for potentially $100 million elementary school. Too.
I know, I hear you, but people are gonna say they already do this. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
we do a survey.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, right? I think you might have an opportunity. Try to change the equity. Get another, you know, right,
I think the elementary started earlier, is that more convenience for dual working families, because the high schooler in theory
Stay home.
get on the bus. You know, so
All right, now we're going, we're gonna wait for that super task force. Correct. I feel okay, I mean, I feel great about the content we covered, I know, sorry if we've been over a little longer than we usually thought. I thank everybody, like, juggling schedules today, it's not ideal. But I do it, and it sounds to me like you want to, beef up the agenda, you know, add some agenda topics to the July meeting, seems like you want to support it like that. Sure, exact form of that.
We on Zoom now still already?
How does it, I mean, what I would say is, how does everyone feel about it? Like, is that, if people are in town, is it?
I'm in town before, but if whatever you're doing.
I'm talking the
Prior
24th,
to that.
but I think, yeah, we want something before that for the plan, that should be a
I think that I agree with that, and I was thinking that, for sure, I'm thinking more that
24th, that was gonna be on site.
there's something beforehand for the. I know you're west.
Yeah.
We're gonna struggle with it. Me and we have a placeholder. for them. That would be. Talk about that case to case.
yeah, I would just, that's the same as, it's kind of.
Yeah, I know that day is, I know that is. So with that. We'll step out.
Yeah.
Second motion.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Michelle Kirby. Kristen Sinani.
Will Warren, aye.
Tim Knight, aye. We have that. Okay, workshop closed. Thank you.